Please be seated. Good evening and welcome to the Council meeting. I'm Councillor Will Lane, the Mayor. In June 2017, 72 of our residents tragically lost their lives in the fire at Grenfell Tower. I ask every member of the Council to pay our deepest and continuing respects in the conventional manner by marking the moment with 72 seconds silence now. Would everyone please stand? Please be seated. The minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Are they agreed? Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Regarding the report on the annual review of councillors' allowances in the Administration Committee report, as all members have an interest, we will manage this with the minimum of disruption, and all members present in the chamber will therefore be deemed as having declared a personal interest in this item unless the member objects. This fact will be noted and recorded in the minutes. Is this agreed? Does any member wish to make a declaration pursuant to Section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, which relates to members' council tax payments and the ability of members to vote on matters relating to the level or calculation of council tax or the arrangements for administering council tax? Take that as no. Does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary or any other significant interest in any item being considered at tonight's meeting? Take that as a no as well. Item number 3 is special announcements by the Mayor, and I have no special announcements. Item 4 is the Chief Executive's communications. Chief Executive, are there any apologies for absence or lateness from this meeting?
Thank you. I've received apologies from Councillors Ahmed, Idris and Marshall, and I've received apologies for lateness from Councillors Burns, Lindsay, Siren, Rendell and Pascal.
Councillor Simmons.
We have apologies for lateness also from Councillor Benton and from Councillor Bakhtiar.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons.
Have you mentioned Councillor Lowry as well? I think she mentioned it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is public speaking. For the benefit of members and those watching, please start your 5 minutes by saying who you are and if you're speaking on your own behalf or for others. The first question I'm going to read out on behalf of Ms. Nicole Belfon-George, and the question is as follows. In light of the increasing rates of youth crime and school exclusion within the borough, I am seeking information regarding the strategies the Council has implemented to effectively tackle these challenges. Furthermore, will the Council contemplate the establishment of a steering committee composed of local stakeholders, including parents and individuals with lived experience, to contribute to the formulation of policies and interventions? Councillor Folkes, would you please respond for up to 2 minutes?
Thank you for your question, Nicole. Firstly, I want to reassure you that the Council takes safety very seriously, and tackling youth violence and exploitation is a Council priority. But this requires many local agencies to work together, as there's no single agency solution to the very complex issues that sit behind crime. The local Safeguarding Children's Parenting Board, which I sit on, includes partners from the police, health, NHS, commissions, community service, probation, housing and the voluntary sector. First-time entrance into the criminal justice system in RBKC is in fact significantly below national and inner London average. RBKC with 89 per 100,000, comparing to 143 per 100,000 nationally in inner London. On your point regarding school exclusions, I think it's really important to note that exclusion rates in RBKC remain low. Rather than exclusion rates within the borough increasing, as per the most recent set of DFE validated data, we've seen exactly the opposite here. There were only 4 permanent exclusions in the latest reporting period, halving the previous figure. This reflects an exclusion rate of 0.03% in RBKC of the 13,000 children that are schooled here. That is below the national average of 0.05%. So whilst it's true to say that suspension rates in 2023 were slightly higher than average, a significant body of work is going on within schools to reduce this. I'm particularly proud of our North Kensington Inclusion Strategy pilot, which has been really effective, and we're continuing to fund that. It's been overwhelmingly successful, and working with our partners like All Child and other people in the voluntary sector. But I'm very happy to meet with you and talk about it personally. Thank you for your question.
Councillor Noor, would you like to respond for up to 2 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nicole, thank you for your question regarding the issue of youth crime and exclusion in our borough. As the lead member mentioned, I think the borough takes seriously about the crime of all sorts, whether it's unsocial behavior, knife crime, gang crime. There's a number of, as far as I know, as someone who sits on children and families committee, and I've worked for a long time in the borough, there's a number of measures in place, including early help, where the issues can be tackled early on before it goes to child being excluded. Also, the youth engagement initiative. I mean, we are lucky to have a number of youth centers, including the borough run and the voluntary sector run, which all children and youngsters can access services to cut down or reduce the element of the unsocial behavior and exclusion. There's also a partnership work going on led by our community safety, including the police, resident associations, where we are thinking, how can we reduce further crime in the borough? In terms of your question of setting up a committee, we have already a number of networks set up already, including the Safer Neighborhood Board, Youth Parliament, world-level panelists, and I'm sure their input will contribute in shaping more inclusive and effective approach to tackling youth crime and exclusion rate in our borough. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Ms. Belfon-George for her question. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Lee Rodriguez to please address the Council. Ms. Rodriguez.
Good evening. Living and going to school in Kensington and Chelsea, myself and the community have noticed that there are a lot of schools all on the same road and area that all finish around the same time. This causes absolute havoc, from fights, phone snatching, disruptions in the road, stealing in shops, and the most extreme stabbings, the most recent being only 2 weeks ago. The community in Abbott Grove need more visible police officers between the hours of 3 and 5 p.m. Myself and the community also have noticed that there are not enough street lights within these areas. For instance, outside of Latimer Road Station, 2 alleyways back-to-back, complete darkness. Westway Sports Centre, complete darkness. Kensington Leisure Centre, complete darkness. These are facilities used for children who are almost scared to come home because of how dark it is, especially in the winter. These areas have been targeted with multiple links of crime due to how hidden and dark these areas are. I do hope the Council can make a change and this can be resolved. Thank you.
Councillor Addenbrooke, would you like to respond for up to 2 minutes?
Thank you, Lair, for coming and bringing this to our attention this evening. I think your request for more police officers between the hours of 3 and 5 is, it's an obvious time. We know there are problems when lots of children come out of school, and we will certainly take this up with the police because they have the primacy for preventing and detecting crime. It's obviously difficult with 3 secondary schools in the area, but the schools do provide after-school clubs and do try to stagger the departure of pupils. I also want to reassure you that the Council takes community safety very seriously, and we have a number of teams that work with the schools to provide different support. The community safety team has strong relationships with our schools and provides support to reduce violence, crime and harm. This work focuses on raising awareness of the risks and signs of youth violence, pupil safety and exploitation, and supporting young people to access help where needed. They also provide workshops for teachers, parents and pupils on a range of crime and safety topics. I don't know whether you've heard of this, but there is It Takes a Village Grants project fund, which works to provide support for pupils most at risk of being affected by crime and exploitation in the period after school. The Council's detached and outreach team offer mentoring services in schools, as well as street outreach in the period after school. They are regularly tasked to patrol the Ladbroke Grove area and schools in North Kensington. And the Council's street enforcement team also patrol the borough, providing visible reassurance and work to resolve waste and antisocial behaviour. With regard to street lighting, the Council street lighting team regularly inspects all of the street's lights on the public highway. However, they would be very happy to look at any specific locations where you feel the lighting is inadequate. We will also contact the Westway Trust again regarding their lighting, as this has been raised with them before on a number of issues.
So could you please conclude?
Oh, sorry. So I'll cut to the very end and just say, we acknowledge that there is an issue, and please, if you've got any ideas or thoughts, please do come and see us. Thank you.
Councillor Ali wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bakhtiar.
I was stuck in traffic, so I had texted Councillor Ali that I might be late. That's why there's a confusion. Ms. Rodriguez, this is a very good question, and I'm grateful that you brought this to the chamber. Most parents are worried about their children, and we know the rise of knife crime and sense of insecurity and safety in the borough, especially in North Kensington, is on rise. So I will add my voice to Councillor Addenbrooke's. She answered you. She gave a good answer. But I would like to urge her and the leadership to prioritize checking the lights in these specific areas, and if we could, to add more community policing in these areas, especially during winter months. And thank you for coming.
I want to say and thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, for your question here tonight. Thank you. Now, I'd like to invite Mokhtar Al-Qaderi to please address the Council.
Thank you. Right, thank you. So I'll be brief. My question is, the Tutu Foundation's report on institutional racism at the Westway Trust found RBKC was deeply involved in discriminatory practices around community assets. Given the Council's duties under the Equality Act 2010 and PSED, as well as its post-Grenfell commitment to fairness, what steps is RBKC taking to ensure transparency and accountability in the allocation of community spaces to voluntary organisations? Just on that, will the Council publish a full breakdown of rent subsidies granted to voluntary and community groups alongside a clear and competitive tendering process for community assets to ensure fairness, prevent exclusion of global majority-led organisations and avoid repeating past mistakes?
Councillor Will, I invite you to respond for up to 2 minutes. Councillor.
Sorry. Mokhtar, thank you very much for coming this evening and asking what is actually both an important and a topical question. I'm going to take the second part first, if I may, with specifically about publishing rents. Any formal, you probably know this, I know you're very well informed, any formal lease of more than 7 years is already registered with the Land Registry, and this is, of course, public information. But we do have to be a bit careful about GDPR and commercial sensitivity on the other rents. So what I'm going to do on that, because I'm quite happy to be as transparent as possible on all of this, and I accept your point. So I'm going to take that away and talk to officers. And I think that'll become clearer in the second part of the first part of your question, which I'm about to answer. So actually, it's almost as if you read my mind bringing this question, because I've just received the first draft of a new VCS policy that we are hoping to consult on quite soon. I won't give a date because then you'll hold me to it, but I've seen the first draft of the report. I completely agree with you. We've got a lot of rather anomalous arrangements around leases with the VCS sector. They're very ad hoc. Some of them are very long-standing. Some of them they're all different. There's no clear structural policy or reason. You are absolutely right. We need to be transparent, we need to be fair, and we need to be open about them. So that's why this document will have a proposed policy, but we'll go out and we'll consult with everyone. And over time, because obviously we're not just going to make radical changes overnight, once people are happy with that new policy, which, as I say, will be transparent, fair, and that's the main purpose of it, hopefully that will address exactly the points that you've come and raised tonight. So hopefully you'll actively involved in that consultation when it appears. Thank you.
Councillor Simmons, would you like to speak for up to 2 minutes? Councillor.
Thank you. And thank you, Mokhtar, for coming to ask this important question. I think you're raising a number of very important and related issues here. There's the subject of racism and discriminatory practices at the Council, the close and possibly less than transparent relationship between the Council and the Westway Trust, and the question of fairness around community assets. It's 5 years since the publication of the Tutu Foundation report and the findings you refer to in relation to RBKC. I'm not aware of any work by the Council so far to address or respond to these, which I think is regrettable and should be undertaken, perhaps within the work to deliver the commitments and change in response to the Grenfell Inquiry report. I think that to omit this would be deeply problematic. On the subject of support for voluntary organisations, including the allocation of spaces, in-kind support, rent subsidies, grants and other funding, as well as social value, particularly in relation to transparency and fairness, as you mentioned, this is something that I know that other residents and other organisations are also very concerned about. I've placed this within the work programme on the Housing and Community Select Committee, and we hope to look at this in detail in the near future. The only way to assure our residents and voluntary organisations, as well as the Council itself, that processes are fair is to provide transparency of the very sort you're asking for. I support your request wholeheartedly and will be working to ensure that it is actioned. And finally, I want to say I think that what has happened in your case and some other cases is abominable and disgraceful. I think it reflects very badly upon this Council and I want to see it put right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you sincerely, Mr. Al-Qaderi, for coming here to speak tonight. Thank you. Ms. Patricia Scala-Williams has asked me to read out her question, and her question is as follows. 11 TfL railway arches at Latimer Road Station have been glazed and prepared or promised to the community after the tragedy at Grenfell. There is a dog unit guarding this falling apart investment. Could the council redirect the money for the regeneration of Portobello Market, which is unnecessary and will kill the spirit of the area, and try to pair up with Imperial College to create 10 eco-pods with mosses and plants thriving in wet environments and one toilet? It would give roofs over many educational organisations. The council is better equipped to navigate this than a single determined citizen. Councillor Taylor-Smith, would you please respond for up to 2 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Patricia, for your question. So let me start with the Portobello Road reference, because this council is very much committed to Portobello Road and to support its long-term success while preserving its unique character. And the Portobello Road Improvement Scheme is part of a streetscape programme which is looking to enhance the market's infrastructure and address issues such as flooding, resurfacing, better facilities, electric power bollards, etc. So these improvements are designed to support traders and ensure that the market continues to thrive. So I really do disagree with the claim that this project will kill the spirit of the area of Portobello Road and it, as being a world famous market, and will continue to protect and enhance its historical cultural significance. Regarding the TfL railway arches at Latimer Road, I completely understand the deep connection that the local community, Grenfell community, has to this space and the importance of ensuring it's used in such a way that benefits local people. And the community has long called for a meaningful investment in this space, and I've lobbied and had meetings and written consistently. However, the big issue here is that we have to recognise that the council does not own these properties on the site, but we do very much remain working with TfL. I met with the Chief Executive of Places for London a couple of weeks ago, reminding him of these arches, and he said he was continuing to look and evaluate this. So we want to encourage innovative ways that we can transform the arches into a community asset. So our focus will continue to be on supporting local businesses, improving market conditions, and making our public spaces more sustainable and inclusive. But thank you for the question. Councillor Simmons, would you like to speak for up to 2 minutes?
Thank you. And thank you, Patricia, for your question. As Councillor Taylor-Smith has said, the railway arches on Lockton Street are the property of TfL, and I believe that the preparation of them for occupation was a planning condition of the Moor West estate when it was built in 2016, in view of the impacts of that development to Silchester estate. Since then, although they have been glazed, they are not watertight and require further work by TfL, which owns them. Now, I understand from TfL that they do have works planned to bring these into use, and they're looking to procure contractors in the next 2 to 3 months. There will be an engagement programme with residents to talk about what could or should be there. I'm not aware that these arches were promised to the community, and I have confirmed this recently with TfL, who owns them. However, given the potential for these units to provide benefits to the community, to local organisations and small businesses, but also to surrounding residents, I would certainly take the view, which I believe that TfL shares, that the use of these arches should be, 1, determined with input from the residents and ward councillors of Nottingdale, 2, especially in view of Mokhtar's question, allocated in a fair and transparent way, and 3, in keeping with the Nottingdale Future Neighbourhood Vision and Strategy that residents designed under the Mayor of London's Future Neighbourhoods 2030 programme. As for the council's, or aspects of the council's, heavy-handed, unwelcome, ignorant, heritage-destroying, harebrained plans for Portobello Road, I suspect that these too could benefit from listening to the views and suggestions of residents, such as yourself, and indeed the Council's own commitments in their response to the Grenfell Inquiry report would demand it. Thank you again for your question.
And I would also like to thank Ms. Scala-Williams for her question tonight. Item number 6 is petitions. Do members have any petitions to present? Take that as a no. Item number 7 is a statement by the Leader of the Council and response by Leader of the Opposition Group. So I now invite the Leader of the Council to address the meeting for up to 5 minutes. Councillor Campbell.
Mr. Mayor, this is a very important evening and a very important meeting where this council sets its budget for the year ahead. And Mr. Mayor, with thanks to officers and thanks to colleagues sitting here on the front bench, it's yet another balanced budget, a pragmatic budget, a budget that signals exactly what we are all about. Low taxes, innovation, making services leaner, more agile and focused on what matters most to the people we serve. A budget that shows exactly why people choose Conservatives here in Kensington and Chelsea, year after year after year, election after election after election. And it shows why, in May next year, they will want to vote Conservative again. We are holding down council tax, increasing by just 80p a week. Mr. Mayor, one of the lowest increases in London. And we're proposing this for 2 reasons. One, we know how difficult rising costs are for many people in Kensington and Chelsea, and we want to make sure we do all we can to help. And 2, when faced with financial challenges, we believe that taking money from people's pockets through taxes should always be the very last option. We look at ourselves first, make sure we're as lean as can be, but services remain as good as they can be. And Mr. Mayor, like many councils across the country, of course we're facing uncertain financial times and difficulty. It isn't easy. Our budget gap, driven by broken promises from a Labour government and rising costs like national insurance, is 40 million over the next 4 years. We will have to prioritise what our residents want most and make sure that we do the basics better than anybody else. Next year, we will spend over 600 million on vital day-to-day services and the delivery of major projects set out in our 2023 council plan. And it's fair to say that the last 12 months has been an incredibly busy time on this front too. We have built award-winning new homes, invested more than 7 million in our parks, continued to build and invest in our amazing public spaces, and over the next 5 years, we will spend nearly £5 million on youth services, investing once again in our outstanding Ofsted-rated children's services, the best in this country, Mr. Mayor. And not only that, 750,000 will go back to residents to help with the rising cost of living. My promise to our residents is that we will continue to work hard to keep costs down and make sure we will spend your money with the utmost care. You put us here, and we're here for you. But, Mr. Mayor, what do we have opposite in what is left of the opposition party? What is the alternative? I'll tell you. And if you've got it, we will spend it budget. They outline a second homes tax ready to ride to the rescue for unfunded commitments. But we know the sums just don't add up. Westminster, a similar borough to us, only managed to collect just over £1 million in the first year. Let's call it what it is, another sticking plaster tax that benefits no one and is just another way to punish those who strive, earn and contribute to this city and this country. Mr. Mayor, I lead a council centred on finding solutions, not more money to go and waste. Only last Friday, we got all the registered housing providers to start working on how together we can improve housing standards. Thanks to the work of Councillor Marshall in particular, we are the only council currently looking at how a high-performing pension pot can contribute to better services or help tackle the cost of housing. We are first in the pack when looking at AI, already using it for better customer service, greater productivity, and even tackling graffiti on our streets. We're fast-tracking simple planning applications, and we're finding ways to help people pay online quickly and simply. Giving people choice, sensible, pragmatic, local government, but finding ways to do better and be better. That is what you get from us. And with just over a year to the next local elections, expect to see more of it. My thanks to Johnny, to officers, the team beside me, the team behind me, all pulling in the same direction, all in it together, and all in for putting residents first. Thank you.
I now invite the Leader of the Opposition Group, Councillor Ali, to respond for up to 5 minutes. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will come to the budget meeting, report or speech later on. I will have a 10 minutes longer than this one. But may I start, Mr. Mayor, that we are in the holy month of Ramadan and thousands of our residents in RBKC are fasting this month. Will the Leader of the Council join me to wish them a happy Ramadan Mubarak to them all, and also wishing them to the Eid Mubarak in the end of this month? I hope I will speak on behalf of the whole Council. Mr. Mayor, this is the 8th month of Ramadan that I have witnessed the horrors of Grenfell housing disaster. As I said before, I will never forget what I have witnessed that fateful night. And once again, Mr. Mayor, once again, I pray for the bereaved and survivors. As I understand, Mr. Mayor, the government has made a decision on about the tower, and the decision is being based on, to my understanding, the structural engineering safety. However, RBKC Labour councillors, as well as the local community, will continue to demand justice for bereaved and survivors. The legacy of Grenfell disaster should have been a safer homes for all RBKC residents and homes fit for human habitation in our borough. However, this has not been the case, as most of our residents who are, and some of them are, most of them, and some of them are tenants of housing association, as well as the council, have been let down. Housing associations in the borough, Mr. Mayor, residents who are housing association tenants have been contacting us, and they absolutely feel that they have been ignored for many years, and that should stop. I have witnessed a young family, Mr. Mayor, who lives in a damp and mold house home in our borough, and when we contacted the housing associations, feel or at least reluctant or show no response, or at least respond to very, very little when we show them the disrepairs and even reaching the levels of hazards level. The issue of the damp and mold, Mr. Mayor, is not new to our borough. It has been across the country, but especially in the north of the borough, has been increasingly for the last few years. Despite the housing crisis and everything that's been happening, residents feel has been let down. The issue with housing association not repairing tenants' homes properly and timely has been ongoing for many years, Mr. Mayor. And the housing association are now acting, some of them, as private landlords, when they actually do a Section 21 notice, or another one known as no-fault eviction. I have been involved in a casework in the north of the borough where residents have been issued a Section 21, where the family who've been living in the borough for the last 13 years, I and councillors from Westminster Borough have been involved in the case, and we have dealt with. Why the councillors from Westminster Borough? Because the residents have moved from Westminster 13 years ago and is happily living here. The housing association in question, Mr. Mayor, have now apologized for their mistake. And I think that shows when councillors work together, despite different boroughs and different colors of political parties, they can actually achieve and do something. However, Mr. Mayor, one thing that's not unique to all of us, it's overcrowding, which is a severe issue that also has been causing the housing crisis, and also the damp and mold because of the capacity of people living in one bedroom, 5 family members. Where will they be sharing? Will they be sharing the room? Will they be sharing the sitting room? Where will they be sharing to live, work, and study as we want? And I understand when the leadership says we want the best borough, we want this borough to be the best borough to live, work, and study. The question for that, the answer for that is not the families that I have been working with, and we definitely need to work together for all of us, especially the leadership who is in charge. And I'm sure they're already campaigning into the election, which is 15 months away, but I think they should look to the whole borough, not just the one area that votes, they think they've got their votes in. And I think the responsibility requires that one works for the whole borough, not just the individuals, the groups, or they feel they got the votes. Mr. Mayor, I would like to mention at the same time, the government has been, after the disastrous 14 years of a Tory government. The Labour government is trying to build 1.5 million homes in the next 5 years, but that's 5 years away. What I would like to do with the council leadership is to think about restructuring the formula of the New Homes programme, where we can actually work with the council leadership to get the government to change the formula from what it is currently to 80% of social to affordable homes, so that we can house the key workers, we can house our doctors and nurses and police officers in our borough, and that we can have strong families that can contribute to the local community, Mr. Mayor. Having said that, and finally to finish off, Mr. Mayor, with this point, I understand it's easy, one can actually say good words, but actions speak louder than words, and this is what we want for the whole borough, not just a specific part of the borough. I had a wonderful time with the leader of the council and the lead member for housing to walk around in my ward, to come with me and do everything. But to this day, the issues that I have raised has not been dealt with. So the good words can work nicely, but I would really appreciate if at least we can translate some of the good words and the good gestures and to work and deal with the residents.
Could you please conclude?
I'll just finish that point. And deal with the residents who are in need for the leadership of the council. So this borough can be remembered the best in the borough, but not only the one that had Grenfell and the housing disaster. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item number 8 is the order of business, and in accordance with the standing orders, I rule that the order of business shall be as published. Item number 9, reports from the leadership team. Councillor Adam Brooke, I understand you have a request under standing orders.
Mr. Mayor, in accordance with Standing Order 42, I wish to move that Standing Order 30 be suspended this evening to allow Councillors Thalasitis and Ali up to 10 minutes each for their speeches.
Is that seconded? That is seconded. So that's agreed, declared and carried. We turn now to the Revenue, Budget, Capital Programme and Council Tax for 2025-26. As in previous years, we will debate the Housing Revenue Account and its business plan separately. There are 2 amendments. The order will be Councillor Thalasitis and Councillor Ali will make their budget speeches. Then the Labour Group amendments to the Revenue Budget and Capital Programme will be moved and seconded first, followed by the ungrouped members moving and seconding their amendments. A general debate on the Revenue Budget and Capital Programme and Council Tax and these 2 amendments will then follow. Councillor Adam will sum up on the ungrouped members' amendments, and Councillor Lari will sum up on the Labour amendments. Councillor Thalasitis will then make closing remarks before the final recorded votes on the amendments and then the recommendations. We shall be using the electronic voting system tonight. Therefore, will the leader move formally the reception of the reports on pages 21 to 284 and the corrigendum on page 5 of the supplementary pack, and then Councillor Thalasitis second.
Beg to move, Mr. Mayor.
And I beg to second.
Therefore, I call on Councillor Thalasitis to make his budget speech.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, I'm grateful for the opportunity to present our budget tonight. London councils are currently overspending by £700 million in 2024-25, the current financial year. However, 270 million of that is on temporary accommodation. And whilst Kensington and Chelsea is a very proud blue dot in this city's political Red Sea, and although we're not one of a self-styled gang of 7, the London local authorities insisting that government bails them out this year, we are not an island and we face big and mounting financial pressures. These pressures include temporary accommodation, as mentioned, but also social care, looking after people who are vulnerable and who have often contributed themselves for many, many years before now needing our help and our support. Both are in common with many of our neighbours, and we are often the last remaining safety net. One additional pressure that could be solved tomorrow is the nonsensical spectacle of Christmas Eve one-year local government finance settlements, meaning that budgets and biscuits sit side by side at the Christmas table and just crumbs remain for non-statutory services. More certainty and more time to plan can often be just as helpful as more money. And whilst Kensington and Chelsea is also one of London's most unique places, diverse, cosmopolitan and outward-looking, from the world-famous Portobello Market to Kensington Palace to Sloane Street and King's Road, there are also big problems. The Grenfell tragedy put into sharp relief the need for this council to change. Some people have felt change, but other people feel we have not changed enough. And this budget puts £12 million into Grenfell recovery, as we vowed to do last year, and safeguards the principle of participatory budgeting, for example, with 2 further rounds of the Grenfell Projects Fund, which builds on new resident-led service standards that have come in over the past 12 or 18 months, and an improved performance on complaints, where around 90% of complaints are now being responded to on time. In the past year or so, Mr. Mayor, I have spent time looking at what works in our borough. I have visited award-winning council homes at Hewer Street with Councillor McVeigh, which were started by Councillor Taylor-Smith. I've also visited amazing spaces, such as the newly replanted Butte Street with Councillor Will, as well as Draycott Avenue and Hogarth Road, where works have been underway. I'm proud that the balanced budget in front of us means that more new council homes will be delivered at Barlby Road, where works are continuing. And I'm also proud that the budget ring-fences money for a new riverside open space in Chelsea, with a possible football pitch, the first of its kind for a generation in an area that has suffered from the cumulative burden of successive major works. In the past year or so, Mr. Mayor, I have also spent time looking at what does not quite work, and it has underlined the urgency of the task before us to produce a budget that makes things better. I have in the past visited Kingsbridge Road with Councillor Addenbrooke, and I'm happy that Councillors Will and Rendell are working up plans to transform the services provided at that site. I've also visited schools, such as Avondale and Colville with Councillor Folkes, and seen the difference that net zero heating systems are going to make to some of our operational sites' carbon footprint. I'm proud that there will be net zero works very soon at Park Walk School in Stanley Ward as a result of this budget, bringing emissions down from the top to the bottom of this borough. Now, Mr. Mayor, I like to say each time that we come to this place to discuss the budget that to govern is to choose. And that's why this Conservative budget chooses to press on with a whole council transformation agenda, all about minimising costs to our residents and reducing barriers to our services, making it easier for residents to access our services and getting out of the way where they don't need us. Transformation and savings looks not just at staffing, although that does matter, but also the buildings we own, better use of funding streams like Section 106 and SIL, and commercialisation, raising greater income without disruption, for example with advertising on bus shelters. And Mr. Mayor, it is also possible to implement digital projects in this council, and to do so in a way that keeps costs down and makes it easier for residents to access our services. Take our parking permits, which will, thanks to joint work with Councillor Kamali and a new customer relationship management tool, our CRM, accept subscriptions and direct debits from summer 2025, meaning that countless needless hours on the phone or in the customer services centre can be eliminated, freeing up capacity. In all, we will deliver £16 million of savings next year, building on more than £10 million of savings in each of the past 2 years, all the time keeping taxes low. Hitting residents in their pockets should always be a last resort, not a first instinct. But, Mr. Mayor, Labour are now in government in Westminster, and they have also made choices. And what have they done to stamp duty? Up. What have they done to capital gains? Up. What have they done to national insurance? Up. And what have they done to VAT on private schools, inheritance tax, non-dom status? Up, up, up. Each and every time they are confronted with whacking residents for more cash or service reform, they choose the easy option for themselves. Most damaging of all to Kensington and Chelsea of the Labour government's many tax hikes will be their changes to employer national insurance contributions. Labour's changes will mean £3 million of cost, which councils only learned they would pick up the tab for in the government's recess rush to get bad news out of the door. This £3 million sum is equivalent to 3% of residents' council tax. And it must be little surprise, Mr Mayor, especially for someone who grew up in Liverpool and the Wirral, where Labour are hegemons, that Kensington Labour also wish to lift their taxes. They're targeting second homes for punitive rates because they don't know how to modernise services or keep costs down. And under their plans, almost 8,000 second homeowners would see their rates doubled, mugged for £11 million in total, equivalent to 11% of the tax take. I'll say again, the principle of this administration is that raising taxes should always be the last option. I may have spent longer discussing Kensington Labour's budget plans, and it's great to see that the Greens and the young group councillors are starting to think about money for a change, had there been much new, but I'm afraid it's all the same old ideas. Mr Mayor, this Conservative budget will be true to Conservative principles. We're prioritising low taxes with the city's lowest tax take on one of London's lowest existing rates. We're focusing on what matters to residents with £750,000 investment in jet washing, graffiti busting and litter picking whilst keeping our twice-weekly bin collections. We're there for people who need us the most with £550 million in the HRA to improve the standard of our homes. We're becoming a leaner organisation with our CRM and piloting artificial intelligence. We're enhancing the borough's amazing spaces, from completed schemes such as Chelsea Green and Hollywood Road to new schemes like Gloucester Road and Kensington Park Road. And we are championing aspiration for people, with a third consecutive Ofsted Outstanding rating for children's services, the best result in the country. I wish to turn, Mr Mayor, to the underlying issues with the rising cost of living. It is still a problem, even if it has seemingly gone out of fashion in terms of media coverage. And although less prominent in national news than 1 or 2 years ago, the simple fact is that many residents still cannot easily put a roof over their heads or pay for the essentials. I was born in temporary accommodation in Kensington and Chelsea, and I understand how it feels to skip meals and to see close family members do the same. Absolute poverty, living cheek by jowl with extreme wealth. And that's why this Conservative council will not just protect our council tax reduction scheme, which reduces the burden on 14,000 of the most vulnerable households at a cost of £13 million. And this is at a time when half of London boroughs are slashing their equivalent council tax support, a shameful abdication of their duties to support the poorest in our society. In addition, this council will distribute £50 to 15,000 of our borough's lowest income households, one of the city's most generous and important support payments. This also builds on the £100 support payment made in each of the past 2 years, which was supported by 97% of residents who were consulted, 1,300 of them in all who responded. And whilst we know that this won't solve all of people's problems, I and we know that it can make a difference and that residents have told us it makes a difference. Mr Mayor, I want to close by thanking leadership team colleagues, especially the leader, Elizabeth, for her support over the past year, both managing the ups and downs of civic life and also producing this robust and balanced budget, as well as colleagues across the Chamber, the Chief Executive, senior management, and in particular finance colleagues, Mike, Lisa and everybody else, for their insight and challenge during the process. I'm confident that the budget in front of us will make this a leaner organisation, better equipped to meet the challenges ahead in a difficult financial climate, and that it will help us deliver a greener, safer and fairer borough.
Well done.
I now call upon Councillor Ali to make his budget speech. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Finally, I realised that the chanting and up and everything else that's happening from the party opposite, it feels like someone is challenging for the leadership next year or the year after. It felt that way, but we will see. We will see what happens, Mr Mayor. But on that note, I'm really happy with the rehearsals. We will see what happens. But at least on this side of the branch, we are stable and we will continue to be stable. And one day we will govern this part. Coming back to the budget, Mr Mayor, thank you very much. That was just beginning for the party opposite. May I take this opportunity to truly thank the officers. Without them, we will not have the support we have financially. And I understand the finance officers, as well as the chief executive and the finance and Lisa and Liam and everyone else who supported us. It's a journey that has started last year. It's not been easy to get into every bit of this Conservative governing team to cut and rather than calling savings, it actually cut. And opposite the to oppose the services that they're trying to cut and to make sure that RBKC will be the best borough to live, work and study in the country and hopefully in Europe and if not in the world. But to do that, Mr. Mayor, you notice the time and expertise to really understand. So once again, thank you very much, officers, for your support. And may I also extend that to thanks to all officers who I think has been working under pressure for many years for RBKC. Mr. Mayor, may I also thank the Labour group of councillors who really supported me to really put together this amendment and the Labour group. I remember last time the group opposite used to say one-page Labour group amendment, but that's not the case now. We're into it and we know what prosperity feels like. We know what is required to be a prosperous borough, not just from housing, education, healthcare, but all factors and the environment and everything else that comes with it. It's just not one vision. We have to have the broader vision for that, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the leadership that I have shown my group and the support they have shown me is already produced, and we have an amendment totaling as in our amendment shows in Table 1, we have £28.8 million of capital proposals and revenue proposals. This will not have come without the team really putting the effort and the time to make sure that we can support the community. After all, what's happening on the Labour Party, now in government, as the party opposite said, we are in the crisis that we are financially because of the part of Liz Truss are now telling us how to manage money, where everyone in the country is suffering the financial that she has caused. And we all know that 46 days of her premiership, still the country is paying the price for it. On top of that, 14 years of mismanagement and everything else. That's why the country have voted Labour government, and hopefully one time the country will vote Labour administration in RBKC so that we can show our values and what we prioritize, as one has said before. Mr. Mayor, we've made sure that making sure that RBKC remains secure and safe. We know when the party opposite tries to cut, rather than call savings to cut the police numbers, to cut the community safety, we know the importance of having community safeties. And because of the number of shooting in our borough, especially the north of the borough, we have been making sure that we get more policing. We not only get more policing from the government, and not to allow what former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has done to close the police stations we have in the north of the borough, not just in the south, but that's not allowed. It's Boris's legacy and will be remembered. Sadiq Khan has been a fighter for London, for Kensington and Chelsea, for London, for the whole country, and we respect him for the work that he's done. Unlike Boris, who was trying to make sure to cut police stations. Coming back, the knife crimes, antisocial behaviour, those are other important points that we're saving, and our budget allows us to save, Mr. Mayor. Coming back to the family and children, we know education is a pathway to prosperity. We have a member of our resident who came earlier this evening to speak about the school exclusion and everything else that comes with it. And what about if a child is living a one-bedroom with 4 or 3 members of his family or her family and do not have anywhere else to go, but only get time to go to the library, let's say in Chelsea or North Kensington, but the council decides to close down that library for Sunday. Imagine what will that child feel and what will they do? So education is the number one, is a pathway to prosperity, and we're supporting education. That's why we're making sure that the library is open, even including Sundays if we can, so that our community who do not have the house to feel good about it, they can go and study the library, so one day they can get good jobs and better and contribute to the society. Health is another important. Health might fit human beings and fit residents in our borough. That's why we oppose the £500,000 they have been trying to suggest to cut. In fact, they cut it now, and they will probably vote for it. But we make sure to remain that £500,000 to make sure that we support adult social care rather than cutting. Housing is another number. We have suggested on our amendment budget improving the housing and the homelessness offices. And the Department for Housing really needs a lot of people. Rather than just saying we're cutting or we have positions to get rid of the advertisers, 6 positions or 7 positions, we actually want more staff to be in that position. Well, not only to support the housing team, but also to support the housing associations who are not at some point fit for purpose, and to make sure that our residents are being valued and represented and supported by the council. They do not elect the housing associations or private landlords. They elected the council, and the council expects, the residents expect the council to work. And most importantly, Mr. Mayor, it's not about just giving people. We should give as the Labour, as the part of growth and prosperity. As you can see, the whole country is looking for growth. And why not RBKC, which I'm proud of it, which I think we all share that we're proud of it. But why not? Why not do the next extra mile and to do £1.5 million to set up Kensington and Chelsea community entrepreneurship to deal with disparity in our borough? The inequality, the economic inequality in our borough is huge. The country knows it. Everyone knows it. The party opposite knows it. We know. It's just that we have to deal with it. And why should we do that? £1.5 million is not a lot of money, Mr. Mayor. But what it can do, it can be a seed for the next prosperity. It can be a seed to move forward and to get a partnership to work with community groups, VCSs, as well as creating opportunities for young people to train, to show that they can be the best. We have the world-class universities like Imperial College London in our borough. We should be using the opportunities to work with them and to work with others. Again, the last point, Mr. Mayor, to mention is, how do we fund? We have, I understand, and we are not in a position to deny that the country, especially London boroughs, are going through difficulties, are going through the financial issues. The lead member mentioned TA, and I understand the TA, but we can do, and especially what we can do, is to make sure that the number of homes that we're building, rather than bringing people, shipping people out of the borough, to give them an opportunity to live in the borough. So maybe we should spend a lot of money. If not, we should actually get the government to help us to build more sustainable homes so that people can stay within the borough, can work, and get good transport links. And that is what it should be, Mr. Mayor. That's why we put £13.5 million for step-free access, Ladbroke Grove. If you do not have access to the good transport links, and again, we have to work together with this. This is not just partisan, it's not a Labour or Conservative, it's the whole borough serving. And I think that's important for people to understand. So £13.5 million to make sure that Ladbroke Grove will be step-free, as well as we have been campaigning for the south of the borough, South Kensington, to have a really step-free access. Again, Mr. Mayor, the leader of the council mentioned that we may say tax, but obviously this is an opportunity to actually make sure that people who can do the good deeds and pay for their taxes for the second homes, which are not being used. We have over 3,000 people waiting in the housing list, and those people need homes. And we have over 7,000, just to get the exact figure, 7,591 homes that are second homes unused, or some of them used. But at that point, they do not pay. We can actually make sure we can get a premium tax, and for that we can raise £11 million to do the services that we work for the borough, rather than expecting them for people who in the lowest, the poorest, and people who need the support, to be given the support, rather than to be left alone and to be said, defend yourself, we're not here to support you. Finally, Mr. Mayor, if I may quote I would say the last US president, I think well-rounded President Joe Biden, what he said about the exactly budget, and if I may paraphrase, and exactly what he said about the budgeting and the values. Do not tell me what you value, show me your budget, and I will tell you what your values are or what your priorities are. And specifically, the Tory administration showed us what their values are by cutting some libraries, by making sure the community, our community, not feeling safe because of the shooting, knife crime, and everything we've done, by not investing in entrepreneurship and moving forward. But we, as the Labour group of councillors and the opposition, who actually cares about the community. We want a safer community for our residents. We need a healthier residents so that they can contribute, healthy minds, healthy bodies, can actually work and could be good contributors. We need a housing fit for human habitation, and we need a good transport links, not the north, but also the south of the borough, across the borough. And finally, Mr. Mayor, prosperity for all. Prosperity for all RBKC residents who feels the right to be given the helping hand, so one day they too can give to the next generation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll allow incoming councillors to sit down before continuing. We now move to the amendments, which are on pages 7 and 27 of the supplementary pack. Will Councillor Ali move formally and Councillor Lari second the amendments?
I beg to second, Mr. Mayor. It's been a long day. Fasting, allow me. Yes, I beg to move, Mr. Mayor. It's been a long day and fasting, so I'm sure you can appreciate that. Thank you.
I second.
Thank you both. And will Councillor Adam please move formally, and Councillor Jeddat please second their amendment?
I move.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Now we move to the budget debate, a general discussion about the revenue and capital budgets and council tax together. I have the following councillors who have indicated that they wish to speak. Councillor Kamali, Councillor Simmons, Councillor Rendell, Councillor Adam, Councillor Hargreaves, Councillor Wade, Councillor Adurian, Councillor Dent-Code, Councillor Yankson, Councillor Jeddett, Councillor Wheel, Councillor Thaxter, Councillor Will, Councillor Nur, Councillor Folkes, Councillor Benton, Councillor Taylor-Smith and Councillor Hammond. Are there any other members who wish to speak not on that list? Councillor North.
Sorry, can I just confirm that's the budget as opposed to the HRA? Because I would like to speak on the HRA.
Okay, to clarify, on the HRA, Councillors Gardner, North and Simmons are all down to speak on that. This is just the general debate. So, Councillor North, you won't speak on the general debate. Thank you. Now, as you can tell from reading out that list, there are a large number of councillors wanting to take part in the debate tonight. So please try and be brief. Do not overrun your time. With that being said, I would now invite Councillor Kamali to speak. Councillor Kamali.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the opportunity to go first. I start by thanking my colleague, Councillor Thalasitis, for putting the budget here this evening, a sensible, balanced budget that I'm sure the whole chamber can get behind. Mr. Mayor, at the last council meeting, we pledged to adopt an AI framework for the councils, and the benefit of using AI is that it summarises things and keeps you very brief and to the point. So I asked it just a few questions. The problem I had when I started was that, sadly, we don't have any proper AI chat systems built natively in the United Kingdom, so I've had to import them from the United States, tariff-free, I'll have you know, but they're here to provide some answers. So I asked ChatGPT, how many boroughs provide twice-weekly bin collections? Only one was the answer. I asked Copilot, how many boroughs have launched a new street enforcement team, roaming around boroughs, making sure that antisocial behaviour is tackled? It said only one. I asked straight from the Oval Office, I asked Elon Musk's Grok, how many councils have launched new street buggies and enhanced their jet washing services? His answer came back that only one. And I asked Microsoft's Gemini, how many councils have recently worked in partnership with the private sector to deliver amazing spaces here on Sloane Street and at Draycott Avenue? And the answer, Mr. Mayor, which you might be surprised, was only one. And then I said, please could you tell me which borough that might be? And they were unanimous. The answer was the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. So there we have it, an equal opportunity user of all the services out there, and they all agree it's Kensington and Chelsea that delivers for residents. So thank you.
I will now invite Councillor Simmons to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I begin my speech on this actually very serious topic, I just wanted to say that I think that Councillor Campbell and her colleagues over there might want to display a little more humility on what residents get from this Conservative council, and also to remind you that the residents of North Kensington did not put you there. On the budget, I would like to applaud and commend the leader of the Labour group for the excellent alternative balanced budget proposals. The Labour group proposals demonstrate how many of the budget savings items appear to be a political choice, and too often a false economy that will lead to further costs, either to the council or to our residents. For too long, this council has balanced its budget, both financial and reputational, on the back of personal costs to our most vulnerable residents, whether through reduction or diminishment of services or through uncompensated detrimental impacts on them of council decision-making. In the context of the programme of change at the council, this needs to stop. Balancing the books on other people's misery and life chances is no longer acceptable. Notwithstanding the challenging financial environment in which we, like other councils, find ourselves, it's very difficult for the Royal Borough to plead poverty when it comes to the general fund and revenue budget. Just look at some of the more harmful savings items that could be reversed in the interests of residents if there was the will to do so. Adding to the existing budget for the Grenfell Community Support Programme, the current budget of £2.5 million a year to support about 6,000 households is already under pressure just 2 months after its launch because of the scale of the need. This is entirely unsurprising when that figure was plucked from the air by lawyers with little real comprehension of the extent to which the local community has been affected by the disaster, and in the context of a council and government hell-bent on minimising and denying that there were any impacts beyond Category A and Category B. It's a drop in the ocean of what is needed and amounts to crumbs in comparison to the scale of the need. If the Council is serious about providing adequate support and recovery for the affected local community, this should be prioritised, together with further additional support from central government, who profess also to support the community. The proposals pertaining to City Living Local Life and NSIL are no-cost proposals which would further the Council's stated commitment to becoming a fairer council. I hope that these will be given serious considerations by the relevant lead members and brought to fruition. Similarly, please note the proposal to reinstate the Grenfell Scrutiny Committee. I remind you all again that that committee was abolished against the strongly stated wishes of local residents, of bereaved and survivors, of the ward councillors and the whole Labour group representing North Kensington. Whatever did happen to listening to residents, and what is this council afraid of? In the interests of improving decision-making and provision for residents and of honouring the commitments made in November, I urge this Council to implement that proposal. On the issue of step-free access at Ladbroke Grove Tube Station, the Deputy Leader has said to me, "I don't see why we should pay for it." Why indeed? And I replied, because it helps our residents and our visitors. You need to be the bigger man. And I say this to the whole of the leadership team. Be the bigger man. We should always be putting the interests of our residents first, before politics, before ego, and before profit. That is how we overcome and move forward from the disastrous recent history in whose shameful shadow we so far remain. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I now invite Councillor Rendell to speak. Councillor Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shall be as brief as possible. But firstly, I'd like to, as Councillor Ali referred to before, wish him and all others celebrating a happy Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak, and wishing all Christians today as well, Ash Wednesday, for the start of Lent. Mr. Mayor, for adult social care and public health, we are operating in a very difficult operating circumstances and a very difficult financial period. There is significant pressure on ASC budgets. We know this. The whole country, as you may have seen, has a 1.5 billion gap in adult social care needs. This is due for many reasons. Cost of living is a major one. Increasing demand is the major factor, and of course, things like inflation. Just under 30% of the budget that the council receives for healthcare in our borough is funded by the NHS, and that is reducing year on year, putting more pressure on the council to step in. As we may know, the ICB, our local NHS, has had to decrease its own budget by 40%, and this is a challenge for us. But I'm really pleased, Mr. Mayor, to say that we have balanced our adult social care and public health budgets for this year. And I think that's something really special that we can be proud of, because we're still providing great frontline services to the people who need it the most. We have one of the best retention rates for staff, proving that we don't have to spend money on agency staff, which many other councils do. And we are one of only a few, I think only 2 councils in all of London that has a balanced budget for adult social care. I think this is really great work for all the staff and team that have done that, and I would like to thank them. Just for example, Mr. Mayor, Hackney, unfortunately, has a 19 million overspend just in adult social care. Lambeth has an 8 million overspend, and Ealing a 7 million overspend. And this is not to mention temporary accommodation that Councillor Thalasitis mentioned earlier, and other pressures, especially on children's services as well, that I'm sure my colleague will refer to later. But however, we have a positive view here at RBKC, and we have an ambitious plan to make our residents even better in terms of their adult social care needs. So we're focusing on capital investments. Again, what Councillor Thalassides referred to earlier. We're looking at Kingsbridge, Mr. Mayor, in North Kensington. We're looking at St Helens Gardens as well to provide support for people with learning disabilities. We're looking at the future of St Mark's Road and how we can improve that particular element. We've got the Lots Road extra care units coming into effect soon. So all these things are having a massive positive impact. And again, doing this on a balanced budget, that's extremely difficult, but these are the reasons why we're putting our residents first. Mr. Mayor, before we continue, I just want to point out a few of the Labour amendments that I just want to counteract somewhat. Labour have suggested keeping Chamberlain House, but I must say this is an ageing building. The people who use that service have told us it's not fit for purpose and no longer fits their needs. So this is why we're withdrawing from that and finding a new alternative accommodation. And I think that's only right. Another amendment that Labour have put down is commence research into alternative social care provision and increase grant support for VCS organisations. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Addenbrooke and I have been working on this. I mean, we have done that. Public Health this year have put £2.3 million into the VCS and working with our VCS partners to increase their capacity to deliver health interventions. That's only really, really positive. And we're using that money in a way that goes directly to the community, and the community can decide on how they can spend it. I think that's an extremely positive development. Again, Mr. Mayor, all on a balanced budget. So I'd just like to wrap up to say thanks for all those colleagues who have helped get to this point. I think we are aiming for the best, and I hope our CQC response, when we receive that, is also one of the best. And I'd like to commend this to the Chamber. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Councillor Adam to speak. Councillor.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the officer, because this is the first time for me to deal with the budget. And when I approached them, I found them very helpful. And also, I enjoy reading through the budget, even health papers. And I made some amendment. Two things strike me. One, I defected to Green from Labour. I'm a person, people person, so I know almost 1,000 house or flats in Goulburn, and asked them some questions. And one of the questions asked about what they think about raising council tax and offer better services. The most of them, they said no. They prefer lower, because people in Goulburn really, I can say they're very disadvantaged families living there. And so when I look into the budget, very things strike me that our council, the Fairer Council, we call it, suggested to increase the council tax. So that's why I thought if we freeze the council tax, at least for this year, maybe we can hear other people from the north of the Kensington. And really, I would like to suggest, even after the budget, if some councillors from the south of the borough come and visit people in the North Kensington and can understand what we're talking about, what we're fighting for, what we're hearing from them. Because council tax may be 2%. For some of us, it's nothing, but for them, change of life. One of my mom's carers telling me that they don't want to open the envelope because they know that there is some increase coming up and they cannot fight that increase. So that's why I suggest for this borough, we call it the richest borough, or people who live in this borough are very rich, just sometimes to consider other people who really, many of us, or many of you, they don't know about them, or even they don't know they exist. And other things strike me while I'm reviewing the budget. There is a slightly suggestion that reduce air quality from where they are now to provide basic services. I'm a person with asthma, and I know how vital for people like myself suffering from such issues, air quality is so important. So that's why I came by suggestion that why not taxing People who have some home, extra home or second home, and some of these houses or homes are really empty. Why not taxing them even half so that we can maintain 5.5 million and we can improve some services. And also we can pause in some issues that we believe we can cut it and we generate money. If you increase the council tax for some people really in a lower level of life, so what is going to benefit the council? We need to sometimes to think about people. Yeah, I'm quite happy about to be the best council, greener council, fairer council, whatever you can name it. But are we a fairer council? I don't think so. So that what I would like to insist for looking into some areas that where you can generate money from. And please don't cut some services to provide a balance in your budget. Thank you.
I will now invite Councillor Hargreaves to speak. Councillor Hargreaves.
Mr Mayor, thank you very much. In my role as Chairman of the Audit and Transparency Committee, I meet with many of my fellow chairs across London and indeed across the country as a whole. And as I do meet and we discuss, it doesn't surprise me the very bad state that many councils across this country's finances are in. We see many massive overspends, failed commercial activities, poor accounting practices, accounts not signed off. I could go on. But I've also come to realise just how good a state our finances are in RBKC. And there's one member of a former member of the Audit and Transparency Committee used to say, K&C does money well. Our accounts are submitted on time and we get good auditors' reports. And for that, we have to thank the lead member for finance and the whole of the finance team who work hard, not just to prepare this budget tonight, but to manage our finances throughout the year to give us those good reports that we get during the audit process. And at the heart of doing money well lies a good, balanced and robust and fair budget. And the budget that we see before us tonight, fellow councillors, is exactly that. Each of us in the chamber will have our own particular issues that we've focused on, depending on what's happening in your ward. In Chelsea Riverside, one of the most densely populated wards in the borough, I am pleased to see the council's continued investment in Cremorne Gardens and Westfield Park, plus the new park at Cremorne Wharf in Lots Road. Actually, the new exciting park in Cremorne Wharf at Chelsea Riverside. I know that residents are very appreciative of that and are looking forward to being involved in the consultation process to design this new park. As a riparian ward, I am pleased to see the council's commitment to repairing the Embankment River Wall and the continued maintenance of Albert Bridge. This is, of course, particularly the maintenance of Albert Bridge, is, of course, in complete contrast to our neighbours in the Labour-run Hammersmith and Fulham, who continue to keep Hammersmith Bridge closed while squabbling about who should pay for the repairs. Mr Mayor, this is a robust and balanced budget, but above all, it is a fair budget. Fair in a below-minimum council tax increase, fair in its protection and in some cases increasing spending on important services so valued by our residents, fair in the provision to continue to fund a 100% discretionary council tax discount for care leavers up to the 25th birthday, fair in the provision to fully fund the local council tax reduction scheme, which will help protect our most vulnerable residents on low incomes who may otherwise have to pay more. Mr Mayor, this is indeed a budget for a cleaner, safer and above all fairer Kensington and Chelsea, and I commend it to the whole chamber. Thank you.
I'll now call upon Councillor Wade to speak. Councillor.
We're facing times of financial uncertainty, both nationally and internationally. With the introduction of wide-ranging tariffs imposed by the US and the potential impact on the UK markets, and the proposed increases in defence, we're on bad times. With the cost of living increases from April impacting more of our residents, particularly the old and vulnerable, creating many more residents in need, there is concern as how appropriate services will be able to respond. So while it's understood that the Council should achieve a balanced budget, it's hoped that this budget is robust enough to cope with the factors beyond our control. In going through the budget, there is a lack of detail and transparency in the presentations available to councillors, and so it's hard to determine what the outcomes of these cuts will have on our residents. With 21% of our residents over 65, we should be planning for a wide range of options, including housing. We have a shortage of social rented, affordable, independent living. Even in some of our opportunity areas, independent living provision has not been incorporated, and that there is a difference in the specification between 10% mobility access homes and purpose-built accommodation for older residents responding to their changing care needs. Mobility accessible homes are in short supply and are not age-related. It is unclear as to whether the general needs accommodation is appropriate and whether this will not conflict with the demands to reduce the pressures on temporary accommodation. The commercial sector has responded to older resident demand, but their charges have created an additional tier within the housing market at a cost that is prohibitive to most RBKC residents. Even those that would be categorized as capital-rich, cash-poor will not be able to afford them. Without a program of independent living provision, we will still face bed blocking and residents will not be able to access relevant care needs. Housing associations provide up to 70% of the borough housing need, and yet there's no investment match funding to ensure that we do not lose accommodation at the financial viability assessment at void. Without some intervention, we will see this sector substantially reduce as they face financial demands of the different legislative requirements. This will make it harder to accommodate and achieve the savings sought, especially in those in temporary accommodation, the disabled, older residents, and those with special needs transitioning into adult social care, requiring housing. Education. It's understood there was a calculation that the pupil numbers would decrease, but has there been any evaluation of those parents who wish to send their children to borough schools due to the imposition of VAT? The use of the parking income is ring-fenced and should be invested in delivering solutions and infrastructure to address delivery bikes, e-bikes, dangerous junctions, improving paving and pavement cleaning, making the borough safer for residents and pedestrians. This, as a borough, we rate as third highest level of serious incidents and deaths across London, and a cyclist highest level of serious incidents and deaths. We would propose that consideration of increasing the second home council tax and the introduction of an Airbnb register and levy to generate funds to control and enforce the condition of properties let, their management, and the 90-day rule of the properties, and ensure safety standards are maintained and secure some of the cuts required in adult social care. The consultation on parking permits for second homeowners, it was understood that permits were provided for those whose cars were registered in the borough, and so our concern around those properties that are rented as Airbnb. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I'll now call upon Councillor Adurian to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Thalassitis for putting forward his budget. I'd like to speak to 3 points, if I may. First off, housing solutions. Well, savings are always welcome. We have to make sure they come as part of an overall package of changes that really helps drive efficiency. As I've stressed before, our housing solution services in particular do need to be more responsive and better able to support councillors with important casework. Second, commissioning of supported housing. I have often raised the need to obtain far better value for money from these providers. We need to ensure every contract delivers the best possible support for the vulnerable individuals and, frankly, the broader community who rely on these services working well. We can make savings and deliver better services. It is not an either-or. And as a related aside, Mr. Mayor, the purchase of Princess Beatrice House using capital funding is actually an excellent opportunity to deliver improvements. Finally, street cleaning. I, of course, hugely welcome the permanent funding being made available to keep our streets clean and the recruitment of additional street enforcement officers as well, assuming we can boost their training and improve cooperation from the Metropolitan Police. However, what was striking, Mr. Mayor, just to conclude, is that the increase in national insurance, employer national insurance contributions is itself equivalent to almost half that extra sum that we're spending on street cleaning, and that's just purely in the Environment Directorate. This, of course, is a direct result of the government's rather curious approach to growing the economy. No country, Mr. Mayor, has ever taxed its way to prosperity, and I sadly fear we're about to learn that lesson all over again. Thank you.
I now call upon Councillor Dentcote to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our budget priorities reflect the priorities of the majority party to perfection. It is clear what you have to provide under statutory duties, what you care about most, people in your wards, and what you're quite content to cut and cut. And the self-satisfied, complacent opening speech of the leader said it all. Nearly £1 million has been set aside for local projects, and we know which parts of the borough this will be benefiting, along with over £700 for the cleanest streets everyone's very excited about, while cutting parks police by £100,000. The council that declared a climate emergency in 2019 is cutting the Green Fund by over £1 million, while 9,000 second homeowners are potentially going to be offered residence parking, 9,000 more cars on the streets, not very green. Cuts proposed for 82 council officer posts, while spending, I think it's around £10 million a year on agency staff. The lost posts fall where good officers are most needed by those most in need. Health and safety, housing needs, community gardening, noise and nuisance, social investment, cut. How dare you congratulate yourselves at being good at looking after money when multi-deprivation worsens and you are not good at looking after people? But tonight I'm going to focus on two areas that concern me: temporary accommodation and the management of property assets. We have over 3,000 households on the housing register and a further 2,000 in temporary accommodation. Meanwhile, there are 2,700 long-term empty homes and over 9,000 second homes, a total of 11,800 unused. That's not my term, that's in the planning term. Not including Grenfell rehousing, in the past 10 years, we have bought around 122, I think I've got this right, ploughing through all the past budgets, homes mostly outside and some in the borough for temporary accommodation. And this includes some right to buy using the Mayor of London's right to buy back funds. The total, including the cost of borrowing, is around £65 million. And I believe these properties are held within the general fund and managed by housing management for a fee. All these properties are used for temporary accommodation, charged at market prices and reliant on government funding for housing benefit, not used to provide secure council tenancies. Why? There's clearly a benefit to the council of spending £65 million to keep homeless families homeless forever, with the government funding the rents. What could it be? The other concern I'm addressing tonight is property asset management. I remember some years back when a number of council residential properties were squatted. No, this wasn't even noticed for a year. There are empty properties and there are those unused and some for which we don't bother to charge for their use. This last one, shockingly, is the use of storage units, Holland Park Terrace, and a large section of office space by, here we go again, Opera Holland Park. They've used these assets in 1996 and have never paid a penny, and now, despite supposedly being independent, we are still not charging them. Why? Okay, so there's Edenham site and 54 St Helens Gardens, proposed developments have been sitting in the pipeline. Why aren't we using, are we going to use the £15.4 million Section 106 funding for affordable housing? Surely this could be used to fill the gaps in the budget there. St Helens councillors have for years been kept in the dark on the planned development of bays 18 and 19 under the Westway or Maxilla Gardens, the MAG as it's called. The community reclaimed the empty building just after the Grenfell Tower atrocity to provide support which the council had singularly failed to do. After some positive press about Maxilla City, as they called it, the council decided then they were squatters and they evicted them, leaving it empty again. And now, despite years of deliberate omerta from the council, we hear the scope is to be reviewed. We should not have to constantly pursue officers to find out what is going on in our own wards. It seems there's a clear policy to keep councillors ignorant. Unless the council works honestly with councillors representing our shamefully multi-deprived wards, they will never be the best. Unless it stops cutting down trees, putting more cars on the road, diminishing our parks, and works honestly on environmental issues, community safety, and tackling inequalities, of all of which are facing cuts, this council will never be greener, safer, or fairer. Thank you.
I would now like to call upon Councillor Yankson to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd first like to commend the lead member for making and producing a balanced budget. It's very, very difficult in the current environment for most councils to produce budget, and as we've heard, lots of councils are in deficit, but we've managed to do that. And I'd like to focus on 2 points: safer and fairer. In relation to council tax, I think I'm right in saying that we're still paying, I think, £14 million for the poorest members of this borough so that they receive those services, but we, as members, are generously supporting those. So I think that's very, very important that we can actually support the people in this borough who need our help. In addition to that, we're also providing a cost of living support payment to all of those members of the borough who also need help. And I echo the words of Councillor Hargreaves, because I thank the officers who are extremely diligent in our Audit and Transparency Committee, and they answer all of our questions and they follow up with written responses to all of the detailed questions that are put to them. So the officers are working extremely hard to make this budget and make the finances very transparent so that councillors, members of the public and residents can watch, listen and understand what is going on with our money. So I commend that to the Chamber. And then finally, in relation to safety, we've had a number of panels with the police, and I commend the budget for including 23 street enforcement team officers for the 18 wards. We heard from Ms. Rodriguez this morning in relation to safety, this evening in relation to safety. It's very, very important. And I would urge the leadership team to continue their work with the police to make sure that our residents in every single ward, not just in the southern wards or the northern wards, but every single ward, our residents must feel safe. And the final point I'll make in relation to Redcliffe, as it's my ward, thank the leadership team for improving Hollywood Road, because that supports businesses, it supports the local residents, and it improves the quality of the place. And we must make sure that even though we've got a balanced budget, we are still trying to improve the lives of all of our residents. So I commend the budget report to the Chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll now call upon Councillor Jeddart to speak. Councillor.
Thank you. Budget should be in a line of fair distribution of wealth, not creating a gap between rich and the poor. This is what we've been seeing for many years in North Kensington in the south. The budget has been prepared by the council conservative lead members, with officers and only a few residents who express their view online. I number for 46,000 in Kensington and Chelsea, only 49 actually believe that something can be done and their views will be taken into consideration when budget will be created. My concerns after reading the budget are as follow, just a few because there are too many and obviously time is limited. There is no mentioning of $250,000 in INSIL fund. There is no mentioning in your budget of 8 million, which was COVID recovery fund, and implying how it was spent so far. There is no mentioning of INSIL fund as a part of budget, sitting in an account which bears income. Again, we don't know how much for today it is. There is no mentioning about curve money, 1.3 million, sitting again in an interest-bearing account. And for April last year, it's brought £64,000. This April will possibly be more than £64,000. I cannot see it in your budget. There is no mentioning about advertisement income. I give you an example. Elscourt has 3 huge billboards. They are brought last year only 129,000 a year. I cannot see a thing here. There are many wasted opportunities. As Councillor Mona mentioned, you have a right. You have a right which you can exercise and you choose not to, which means you really seriously want to create this gap between rich and the poor. There is no provision whatsoever about seizing houses of Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs who have assets here in Kensington and Chelsea. You are not mentioning about parking income, how it would be spending for streets like Straverton Street, right, which is a health and safety outside Barbara Primary School for years. The street is 1950s. I tried really hard to work with you to make it nice and smooth reference, but I don't have a response from you into my emails. What I managed to pick up from your budget is that you managed to create 3 jobs, each £45,000 for monitoring officer on high-profile streets. So you yourself admit there is a gap between rich and the poor, between north and the south. How dare you to do that, but you have done it, not even knowing that. And another thing is you refer on page 89 to TMO fees. If I gather correctly, after Grenfell, TMO not was meant to come back anymore, but obviously you go back on your word. There is no disclosure about conference events, how much it's bringing. There is no provision for law centres. Where are our law centres in North Kensington? Nobody can get hold of this North Kensington Law Centre. King's Road cannot manage the whole borough, can it? There is no provision taken, but you have taken provision for internal legal costs. There is no provision taken in regards how can we manage our chief executive salary, which for today it's over £300,000. You can manage salaries, you can create top jobs of 45,000 or chief executive jobs. Do we really need executive for housing? Do we really need executive for environment? Officers cannot do that job? You created bureaucracy for yourself. And I don't know how you appoint those officers. There is no provision in regards to monitoring how INSIL is spent. I find out that there is INSIL of £22,000 sitting still there in North Pole from 2022. Nobody monitors that. It is again possibly in your account generating interest for you. I cannot see here a word. Again, you have not created any provision how City Living Local Life is spent. There is no end of project report available on your website. What you did completely shut that from the public view. And once again, business as usual. I thank you for your time.
I will now invite Councillor Wheel to speak. Councillor.
Thank you. I rise to congratulate the lead member and the whole of the finance team, who I believe to be very committed and dedicated to this borough, for bringing in a balanced budget at below the maximum council tax rise. I can't emphasise enough how important that is. It's very easy to put in tax rises when everyone else is doing the same, when the government is giving us a bad example and other boroughs are falling into that trap. But the more that government takes away from all of us citizens in terms of taxes, the less agency we all have, the less freedom we all have to spend our money as we want. And the downside, the even bigger downside of that, is the dreadful effect it has, the drag it has, the shackle that it is to our economy, and how it commits us to low growth all over the economy. So this commitment to not putting up the council tax to its maximum is a major achievement by this council. But as well as Johnny and the finance team, we also have to look further around the council, because bringing in a budget like this isn't just the effort of the finance team, it's all exec directors, all lead members and all our staff looking at our budgets and challenging themselves to control expenditure and to find ways to continue to deliver excellent services with less money. We also shouldn't forget the contribution of things like our pensions team and Councillor Marshall, making sure that we don't have to, that we have a fully funded, more than fully funded pension fund, and that we don't have to contribute huge amounts like other councils do. We have to thank the Transformation Programme and councillors like Councillor Pascal, who are driving forward and supporting officers in their quest to transform the way that we do services, our procurement team and their commitment to trying to get best value all through the council. And finally, I just want to touch on our budget working group in scrutiny, ably led by Councillor Hudd. And I think you'll notice that one of the themes of the recommendation of that is to keep the emphasis on transparency, and by that, in our budgeting. And by that, we really mean analysing the elements of our budget, like reserves, so that we really understand, as we enter choppy financial waters, we really understand the implications of what we're doing, and that we're not fooling ourselves with reserves or anything like that. I don't believe that we are, but I think that we need to continue that emphasis on analysing and challenging ourselves for everything that we do. Thank you.
And I'll call upon Councillor Thaxter to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to talk about this budget is more than a financial plan. It is a statement of our priorities, our values and our vision for the society where no one is left behind. We will discuss steps we must take to create a stronger, fairer and a more resilient care system. We know the pressures, rising demand, financial constraints, and urgent need for sustainability solution, but we also know our responsibilities. The challenges before us is not simply to balance the books, but to ensure that our care system remains compassionate, efficient, and fit for the future. The budget reduction on the continuation of preventions initiative for greater independence that is less intrusive is a matter of concern. Where is the quality assurance? There is no significant evidence to prove whether or not this service will provide better care for residents. The physical and mental health of our residents will be affected. The continuation of prevention initiatives without quality assurance poses several significant disadvantages, such as waste of resources and loss of trust. To ensure the prevention initiative achieve their intended outcome, robust evaluation, data collection, and quality assurance mechanism must be embedded in our design and implements. While digital transformation for adult and social care brings many benefits, it also comes with several disadvantages and challenges. Many of our older adults, individuals with disability, and those from disadvantaged background lack of digital skills or access needs to engage with online services. These can deepen inequality and also create barriers to essential care and support. Adult and social care relies on personal relationship and trust. Creating digitalization may reduce face-to-face interaction, potentially leading to loneliness and a decline in quality of care. Service users who rely on emotional support may feel neglected and disconnected. Digital transformation requires significant investment in infrastructure, training, and systems upgrade. In conclusion, I would just like to say, while digital transformation has the potential to enhance efficiency, accessibility, and quality of care in adult and social care, this must be implemented carefully to avoid exacerbating inequality and reducing the human element of care. A blended approach combining with technology with strong personal care can help mitigate these risks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I will now call upon Councillor Will to speak. Councillor Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to start by thanking the lead member, Councillor Thalasites, and all of the finance team, Mike and Lisa, for the huge amount of work they've done in bringing this very sensible, balanced budget to us today. I'm going to try and be brief because so many people have spoken, but I really just want to say a little bit about capital spending. Throughout my time in this council, we have always invested in the public realm and infrastructure. A lot of the projects have already been mentioned, but my time as lead member in education, we spent 250 million investing on all our schools, building new ones, and much of it, may I say, was in the north of the borough, so I completely reject the suggestion that we never ever spend money in the north of the borough. We spent 39 million on the 2 Balby schools, so it's just absolutely absurd to say that we don't. Right now, we've heard about the Lots Road Park and the significant projects such as Kingsbridge and St Helens, also both in the north of the borough. But I also wanted to take a moment to just talk about some of the work that goes behind it, because the reality is we don't have as much capital as we used to have in the past, and also interest rates have gone up sharply, and that has a very significant effect. But we still want to be ambitious. We still want to deliver that better public realm and infrastructure for all our residents, because we know it's important to them. So one of the pieces of work Councillor Thalasites and I have been doing with the team, what I call good old-fashioned conservative good housekeeping, and we have been going through line by line, just cutting out anything that's old or shouldn't still be there, or etc., or just tidying up the timescales that it's actually happening to make that budgeting as tight as possible. And we managed to save 2.5 million just on the costs of borrowing just by doing that alone. So all very boring stuff, but it's important, and it means we can get as much money as possible to send our projects. And we're also doing, as well as good old-fashioned housekeeping, we're also trying to be creative. It's already been mentioned by the leader tonight that we're trying to be doing something really innovative with our pension fund to try and help TA. We know it's a huge problem and that many people are without the security of a home, and that's not something we want to see. And finally, as I've been talking about housekeeping, I do think it's important to mention that Notting Hill Police Station was closed by the Labour Mayor, Sadiq Khan, and it is he who has refused to sell it or reopen it.
Councillors, please. We have more members that wish to speak tonight. I'd like to call upon Councillor Nur to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like first to thank all the council staff, in particular the finance team and our leader, Kasim Ali, for both producing the budget and the Labour budget. I want to talk about only 4 points to save time. The first one being the reduction of send transport. I'm aware this is element of transportation and by borough work, and also having a new school, special school in the north of the borough, which reduces the cost of transportation, which I know personally was much higher than what we have. Having said that, we need to ensure those who need most help need to get that support so they can access services. The second point is, it has been already mentioned earlier, is a reduction of library hours, especially on Sunday services. A lot of youngsters, especially those who live on overcrowding accommodations, who share one laptop or desktop, rely on going to the library when there's no other resources open for them, for their reference books and reading times. So as a whole council, we need to avoid cutting library hours at any cost. My third point is, it may look very small, but it means a lot. During holiday time, especially the Carnival week, we experience a lot of the elderly needing to be moved away from London or somewhere quieter so they can rest. I remember only last year that the place has run out, funded by the council through Age UK, and those elderly could not get place to go. They have to remain in their homes or flats for the whole period of the carnival. 20,000 is not a lot of money, so surely we can find that money from somewhere to fund that service. My fourth point is increasing caseload for youth offending team. I can confess personally, in this borough we are lucky to have a youth service which is fully funded to compare to the neighboring boroughs and London-wide. Having said that, we also know most of the crimes are related to the youth offending team. So this has come through our, I think, families and children committee, and we've been advised this will be a leadership role or senior officer's role, not frontal line. So I really need reassurance we will not cut our small number of youth offending team in our borough. Because tackling youth offending in our borough, whether it's south or north, we will avoid having what we have last year summer, a lot of night crime events, and shooting taking place, and a lot of unsocial behavior. So I'm looking at the lead member for finances to ensure those small changes not to be touched. If we are sincere about being a fairer council, let alone about the greener, but equality is the most important thing in our life. So we need to ensure coming summer, our elderly will not be stuck in their flats. Thank you very much.
I'll now invite Councillor Folkes to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Like my colleagues, first I'd like to thank Councillor Thalasitis and the whole finance team. They've really held our feet to the fire on this, and we've all had to make some very difficult decisions to reach this balanced budget tonight. But obviously I can't start this speech without commenting on our unprecedented third consecutive outstanding judgment by Ofsted. That is a decade of delivering outstanding services for your children and young people. And Mr Mayor, this is a testament to our dedicated staff and family and children's services, and I would like to thank every single one of them for what they've done for our young people. It's really astonishing. But it also reflects the Council's commitment to our young people. Over the next financial year, we're rolling out our Youth Grants programme This is almost a 5 million commitment over the next 5 years, which is more than any other borough in the country, and hasn't been a cut on previous years. It's a grants programme that was co-designed with young people and their parents to deliver what they want to see our youth services looking like. And we know the importance of investing our young people's future and providing the right support for them at the right time. And Councillor Noor, I agree with you. The safety of our young and people who might be at risk of getting into trouble and are vulnerable, that is of paramount importance to us, to support them, to find the right place, the right education, and where they can go on to. But this ambition is strangely not reflected in the Labour's budget. Their answer to managing budgets despite financial pressures ignore the need for any savings at all. What's their approach to transforming services? Well, let's just stick to the status quo. And they oddly say that education isn't a priority for this council. Nothing could be further than the truth. Of our 30 primary and secondary schools, 95% of them are good and outstanding. Education's incredibly important to us. I'm so proud that per head of the population, we spend more than any London borough, and I'm repeating this because it's so important, on our services for our young people. And that isn't easy in this challenging financial climate. In line with other boroughs, this council is seeing a rise in the number of children with complex behavioural and mental health needs, and they are requiring exceptionally high cost packages of care. We now have 5 children whose packages of care cost in excess of £10,000 a week. That's an estimate annual cost of £2.6 million. But despite these pressures, we're being innovative in how we deliver services to ensure that we're providing value for money. We're investing in AI to make the processes more efficient. We're enhancing our short break services and moving to a by-borough service for children with disabilities. We're maintaining 53% of our children with SEND in mainstream schools. That's 12% higher than national, and using capital investment to build local capacity, to build specialist needs. We've expanded our local accommodation for care leavers, saving over £500,000. And we're investing a further £2.5 million to expand this offer earlier. But I'm interested that the Labour Party wanted to cut the £300,000 saving we made in transport costs. The reason we have this saving was because we invested in the outstanding Queensmill School, so our local SEND children have a local school which they can access without needing SEND transport, ensuring a £300,000 saving every year. It's clear that we do face significant pressures. But here in K&C, we're being innovative and bold. We know that being outstanding means being transformative and delivering value for money services while ensuring that the best services are there for our children and our young people. So whether it's investing in expanding school places or providing more specialist alternative provisions, schools, we want to be the borough that's leading in our investment in young people. And it's clear that when we talk about being the best place to learn, not only do we mean it, we're delivering it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll now call upon Councillor Benton to speak. Councillor Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, this council offers the working class people of Kensington and Chelsea some of the most economically and socially disadvantaged people in this city an even harder boot to the throat. Now, brazenly leaving money on the table, at least 11 million of it, while cutting and cutting and cutting our already not fit for purpose frontline services. Very innovative, by the way. Because, of course, who would that hurt? Their party's only true constituency, the profiteers and parasites that continue to suck us dry. I'll repeat something I've said here before, although I will this time edit my response, since experience has taught me that certain words are considered, wrongly as it turns out, actionable by certain members. If the members on that side of the chamber had a fraction of the casework we in the Northern Wards do, they would wipe that S star 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 off their F star star star. Some recent casework examples, because this is all very wafty and abstract. A single mother with 2 dependents fleeing domestic violence, having their duty summarily discharged, in error, 3 times, eventually being told to make the choice, live together in a broken down car in an alley, or give away your kids to the state. How about a 75-year-old woman with no family and no resources served as Section 21, no fault eviction, sitting around waiting for the bailiffs with nowhere to go? Again, her duty was discharged apparently by an apprentice, no reasons or recourse offered. What about the family of 5, soon to be 6, mother pregnant, living with multiple chronic conditions, expected to stay in what is, by any reputable national standard, a single-bedroom flat rife with toxic mold? Apparently they don't qualify either. Has any Leave member had one of these officers that they love to compliment when it makes them look good, beg them just to get a line open to their equivalent officer in another department? Is that innovation? These decisions, deliberate or not, are clear functions of a chronically understaffed, undersupported workforce. And yet apparently there exists some magical restructuring efficiency spell that you expect us, the people of the borough, to believe will deliver better services with even fewer staff. It sounds stupid because it is. Anyone who takes this position is either so blinded by the absurd ideology of the market that they should be allowed nowhere near public decision making. Either that or they're simply lying, but the result is the same. To approve this budget is to say that they are happy with the torment that we are visiting upon that single mother of 2, that 75-year-old kicked out on the street, that family of 6. In fact, it could stand to get a little worse, couldn't it? Why not? I mean, they have all those lovely bin collections. Brandy and cigars for everybody. Job well done. Very innovative. Live in Goulburn for 1 week and say that's a fantasy. The state of you. To approve this budget is to say that you are happy with the torment we are visiting upon that single mother of 2, that 75-year-old kicked out on the street, that family of 6. Their policies do that. And when they protect the bottom line of the most reprehensible and lazy scroungers on, only to further bleed these failing public services, they are telling us clearly what matters to them. Protecting capital matters. Protecting the rich matters. Our pain, our lives simply don't matter.
I'll now invite Councillor Taylor-Smith to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. May. So, on a day that I welcomed a grandson. Thank you. Born in this borough, latest resident. So please forgive me, Mr. Mayor, if I'm in an optimistic mood, because I am optimistic today. I'm very much looking forward to the future. So, and I say this with humility to Councillor... I say it as a Conservative council, we understand the importance of sound financial management, and I think that's being demonstrated in the budget, so beautifully crafted by Councillor Thalasitis today. And this is something which is going to be passing on, or for us to want to pass on to a generation, a borough, which is focused on residents' priorities and on delivering high-class services. And I'm incredibly proud of the borough's rich cultural offerings. Now, budget day here in the council wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for Councillor Dentcode's reference to the Opera Holland Park, something that I, although not being a great opera lover, I don't deny them the small office given to them on a social investment basis, bearing in mind the amount of outreach to do, as I don't begrudge the tabernacle that we make available to Notting Hill Carnival, which is a personal favourite of mine and something that we will continue to support. But not only just these cultural offices, but also our museums. And Leighton House is about to celebrate its centenary in terms of council ownership. And we've had over 55,000 visitors during that year, which is a great achievement for them. So as summer approaches, we're all going to look forward to Notting Hill Carnival, and the council once again will support it, and we will remain engaged with our partners, and planning is very much going on at the moment. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about libraries. Now, libraries, watch my lips, remain a cornerstone of community service. But despite the Labour scaremongering that's going on here, we are not closing our libraries. And in fact, it's completely to the contrary of that, because they're thriving. Our summer reading channels broke new records. We've got attendance events risen by over 10% and over 46,000 participants. And we're transforming our libraries to provide services that are relevant to our local community. So part of that, just to, again, picking up something Councillor Thaxton talks about values, which I agree, is that we've got an exciting new development of Phase 1, and emphasis on the word North Kensington, on the North Kensington Social Justice Archive project. And this is an initiative that's more about just a collection of records. It's a commitment to preserving the voices, struggles and achievements of the North Kensington community. We have no boundaries in this council. For decades, local activists, residents and grassroots organisations have fought for justice, fairness and recognition from housing rights and social inclusion. And this archive will provide a central space to document these contributions, ensuring that future generations can learn and build from their legacy. It will offer a place of reflection, discussion and inspiration, reminding us that social progress is driven by the voices and actions of local people throughout our borough. And it's a testament to our borough's resilience and determination to shape a fairer future. On economic development, so important, Councillor Allery, in terms of getting people into employment, our recent apprentice fair, and if you saw it, 1,400 visitors came to that event. There were 500 live opportunities. NHS job fair in May, again, very, very well attended. And we have to tackle these challenges and opportunities. So 444 residents have engaged with our employment programmes, 129 of them have entered into training and 90 secured jobs. And so we're also proud of our adult learning as well, which has retained its good offset rating. Conscious of time. So, Mr. Ware, turning to Labour's budget amendment, you know, the proposal to raid reserves and hike council taxes on second homes is reckless and short-sighted. Reserves are there to protect services. Meanwhile, all I would say is that it's financially irresponsible and not looking to the future, and will put people off investing in this borough. And we shouldn't rely on short-term cash grabs. So, in summary, Mr. Mayor, across my portfolio, we have identified over £500,000 in savings and additional income, while continuing to support world-class events, library programmes and employment initiatives. Confirmation that this council remains committed to making our borough the best place to live, work and learn, without resorting to Labour's irresponsible approach. I beg to pass the mic.
And Councillor Taylor-Smith, may I congratulate you on the birth of your grandson. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Hammond to speak. Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd also like to start by congratulating my friend Councillor Taylor-Smith on his happy family news. And my good wishes also to the Leader of the Opposition and others celebrating Ramadan and any other religious festivals today. And I would also like to congratulate the Leader of the Opposition on producing a remarkably different shadow budget from usual. For 30 years, the much-missed Councillor Mason made exactly the same speech every year at budget time. I mean, I wasn't here for all of them, some of you were, but I heard enough of them. This shadow budget is new because it includes everything. All the eggs are in the new tax basket this year, the second homes tax. So at least it's provided some variety for us this year in listening to that. But as my friend, the Leader of the Council, pointed out, it won't work. They say it'll raise £11 million. Westminster, as she pointed out rightly, it only raised £1 million. So that won't pay for all their hobby horses. As the Chancellor of the Exchequer, our Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer, has ably demonstrated, you can talk about growth all you like. Talk about growth all day, but if you tax everything that moves, what you're going to do is change behaviours and suppress growth, and that's exactly what's happening in the economy. And that's exactly what would happen with the second homes tax were it to be introduced, which I'm sure it won't be under this administration. And I think I've got a second point to make about the shadow budget, and that is this, and it's not a budget of an alternative administration, which is what their job is. Their job is to replace us, to make the case to replace us. And let me give them a little bit of political strategy. Let me help them with their campaign for next year. If they wish to win next year, they need to defeat at least 13 of us sitting over here, and possibly including the Liberals as well. That gets them a majority. So, yeah, good, the Leader of the Opposition's making notes. Now, if they want to defeat us, stealing the NSIL and the City Living Local Life from our wards is not going to encourage the voters in those wards to vote for them if they're going to take all the money and spend it in their wards in North Kensington. So there's a logic fail there. And they've obviously written off all the wards, the 4 wards that surround Kensington High Street, because they're reintroducing the dangerous cycle lane. Now, I don't know if any of them have done any canvassing in, for example, Holland Ward. I'm sure they haven't, but if they had, no, I haven't seen them either. And obviously, the Councillor for Holland Ward here is saying he hasn't either. But they might find out that the residents actually don't want the cycle lane back. But it's clearly a fundamental plank of their campaign here. So I think a bit of rethink for next year might be appropriate, but this is certainly not a serious budget of an alternative administration for the council. We also have I won't let the ungrouped budget detain me for very long. It's basically the same thing, but a bit lighter and with less detail, sort of half strength of the same thing. I might gently point out to our colleague for the Green Party that the Workers' Party of Britain is not necessarily at the respectable end of British politics, but that's a matter for them. And it's... well, you can make a... I know that the Councillor for...
Please, I want to hear what Councillor Hammond has to say. Please.
The Councillor for Dalgarno knows full well how the complaints process in the Council works, and a bit of political knockabout in the Chamber is perfectly acceptable. And...
Please, Councillor...
So I know...
Councillor,
the opposition
we must
front
listen
bench is
to what members have to say.
or one of them is supporting the Workers' Party there, but that's fine. So let's move on then to the actual budget that we've got in front of us. And I do want to congratulate the lead member and his officers on what is actually a remarkable budget, and many have made the points. Considering where we were last autumn with the gap that we've had to fill, to get to where we are, a balanced budget, one of the very, very few non-maximal council tax rises in the country, and that's despite the pressure of the national insurance rise imposed on us by the government. That's a great achievement, together with all the investment in street cleaning, graffiti removal, which my friend Councillor Kamali has introduced. That's already made a material difference. And we've got some great capital programmes. Bute Street is amazing. I look forward to Gloucester Road getting financial approval later this month. And it wouldn't be a budget speech without me mentioning the Mews Arches. Nice to see them, so I commend the budget to the Chamber.
Councillors, we will now move to summing up, and I'm going to ask the proposers of amendments to sum up first. So, Councillor Adam, you have 5 minutes to sum up. Councillor.
Thank you. I don't want to have that.
Very well, Councillor. In which case, I will move to Councillor Lari. You also have up to 5 minutes to sum up, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Labour Group presents a broad, progressive and resident-led vision for the budget in order to provide the services which our community have stated they deserve and require, and most importantly, puts residents in control. The responsibility of this council and any local authority should be to provide the best services, resources, funding and staffing to meet the needs of some of our most and Greater London's most vulnerable and deprived communities in London. These services are not a privilege, they are a right. Indeed. And if the Deputy Leader's answer is an archive, then you need to kindly reassess. There is a fundamental inequality present with the manner in which this council attributes funding which affects community safety efforts desperately needed by our communities who have suffered increases in gun crime over the past year, including murder in my own ward in Goulburn. As a Labour group, we seek to address this inequitable distribution of resources through neighbourhood community infrastructure levies and CLLL. Today, the £7,000 this council has allocated to ENSIL money to support Goulburn residents is overshadowed by the £1.4 million allocated to support Brompton and Hand Town. It also overshadows the £32,000 allocated to Queensgate, the £19,000 to Redcliffe, and the £52,000 in Courtfield. So, the Labour alternative budget proposes at no overall expense to the council or taxpayer to reallocate resources to our most deprived neighbourhoods. Through this, we're proposing to empower our residents by giving them the funding through ENSIL to take decisions on how they want to shape their communities. This could bolster community safety efforts through funding more community safety officers by the Ward Fund, CCTV, improve local infrastructure and the public realm. We also propose to use it to fund Ladbroke Grove step-free access. Having written to the Deputy Mayor of London myself, I can confirm that it is deemed a viable station for a project, and they have asked for match funding to deliver this. So if you want to take it seriously, it's time to show action. Our Labour alternative budget addresses the under-provision of health and housing services. To do this, we believe it's fair to raise funds through second home earners who can afford to just contribute a small amount more, but which would bolster our revenue by 11 million. We propose to use this money to abolish all home care, daycare, transport and home meal charges. If Hammersmith and Fulham can do that, so can we, and on a balanced budget. We also will use it to fund free uniforms and restore free swimming for our youth. Successive years of leaving staffing posts vacant have led to malprovision. We have officers who work incredibly hard, but they need the adequate support of their colleagues to serve our communities. By proposing to reverse staffing cuts in adult social care staffing and frontline housing needs staffing, we propose to enable a greater quality and speed of service. We also use our budget to provide a progressive vision for our youth. The new Kensington and Chelsea Community Entrepreneurship Scheme would create more jobs for local residents, enhance skills, training, and create new business leaders who will reinvest in the community. Our new scholarship budget for Grenfell-affected youth is absolutely necessary to enhance the education and training of our youngest who've suffered unspeakable trauma. And whilst there have been complaints that our budget has used the reserves, this is in fact not correct. There is only one line item which uses reserves, and that's to fund an entrepreneurship scheme, which is deemed an acceptable investment because it's an investment back in the community. So the Deputy Leader should really have read our budget appropriately before giving the same response he does every year. It's getting boring now. In conclusion, our Labour Group budget is demonstrably fair and balanced, with a forward-thinking vision to support our residents, catering to their needs. Again, services are a right, not a privilege. I commend our alternative budget to the Chamber.
Will Councillor Thalasites now please sum up the debate? You have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to be quick because I'm going to try to respond to all of the members who have spoken. I'll begin with the opposition. Kasim, in his introduction, talked about the various tax rises that Labour have imposed, up. One other thing also went up, the Conservative vote share in Holland in 2022. And if he's looking for leadership candidates, he could look to his right. Or to his left. He did come after all, or probably not behind. Claire congratulated Kasim in her speech at the beginning. That's how you know she's running. And we then heard from Mona, who acknowledged that it was the first time she'd looked at the budget this year. I think this was a fact-finding mission, it's probably fair to say, and we can chalk it up to experience. Though her instincts on council tax and air quality, I think, are quite right. So maybe this is just a staging post on her political journey. Can I thank Linda, who did speak, for not putting forward an amendment to the budget? I think that made an enormous difference to the debate. Emma Dent-Code talked about cuts all over the council, cutting the Green Fund. I want to focus on one particular cut. This council has cut carbon emissions the fastest in London over the past 5 years, and that's a record that we should be proud of. And just recently, we modernised our waste fleet, meaning that 90% of the emissions coming from that have been cut too, thanks to new hydro-vegetable oil, which is fantastic. Eva continued the rogues gallery of opposition councillor speeches, but had very little to add, I felt. But I will give her a few pointers. The COVID and cost of living fund is mentioned on page 101 of the budget and still on page 76. I could carry on, but that could be one to return to later. I want to thank Portia for the work that she does do on the Adult Social Care Committee. I know that Lucy really values it, particularly on the Gordon. But I do think that although she spoke well, there are funding questions in the Labour budget that would need answering before we could consider accepting it. Can I join Abdullahi for highlighting Kensington Queens Mill and the associated Send transport saving, which is fantastic news. And to Toby, can I just say that there is £14 million in the budget for the council tax reduction scheme at a time when half of London boroughs, almost all of whom will be Labour, are cutting their council tax support. Sina appeared to misunderstand how NSIL works, because the way it works is that it mitigates development in a particular area. That's why it's hypothecated for wards. But there is good news. Just this week, we've approved £3 million of borough SIL in Goulburn for Warnington, and some of that will be NSIL for Goulburn in the future. I'll turn to the Conservative speeches, all of which were fantastic. I would say that. Jem talked about twice-weekly bin collections, the SET team, and all of our buggies. On each of these, there is just one borough that does these. But from Labour, in the subsequent debate about how they would do better, answer came there none. Josh talked about how we're one of two councils in London who have balanced our ASC budgets, which is a huge contrast, as he pointed out, with Labour-run Hackney and Lambeth. So I want to pay tribute to Josh, Bernie, and everybody else who has contributed to that. Gerard is quite right that KNC does money well, and to highlight the new park in Cremorne Wharf, which is something that the Conservatives are doing in Chelsea Riverside, because we know that people want more green space in the area. Hamish spoke very well about how tax is no way to prosperity. I quite agree. And so too did Sydney talk about some of the cost of living work that we're doing. Mary spoke with deep knowledge of the issues and highlighted our low tax approach driven by cross-council transformation. And I also want to thank Prissy and the working group for their contribution. I want to pay particular thanks to Emma, who's one of the most able councillors of her generation on this council, for her guidance and for the work we've done together on capital. I can't do it all alone, and I look forward to working with the rest of the leadership team to try and buy Notting Hill Police Station. Catherine said that it made it not once, not twice, but three of us who have mentioned the Ofsted Outstanding Report in Children's Services, one of us for every outstanding report we've received over the past decade, and that we have co-designed our youth support grants. Can I congratulate Kim on the birth of a newborn grandson? It's fantastic news, and also a testament to his dedication that despite that, he's hot-footed it here to speak in the budget debate. And to Greg, I will only thank him for his kind words and say I will stop before I rival Councillor Mason for speech length, who he mentioned. This is a fantastic budget. It's greener, it's safer, it's fairer. There's money for new trees, which I know Councillor Whedon-Sands will love. There is money for acoustic cameras in places like Holland, and also for new homes, 600 of them, as we continue to make the borough fairer. So please, everybody, vote for it. Yeah.
We now turn to the votes, and I would remind members that we will vote first on the two amendments and then the revenue budget, capital budget and council tax need to be recorded votes. There will therefore be 3 votes in total. The first vote is on the Labour amendment to the budget. Would those in favour of the Labour amendment press the I button, the top one? Those against the Labour amendment press no, the bottom one. And those wanting to abstain press the middle button. Once the 3... It hasn't started yet. The buttons will flash shortly. And those wanting to abstain, press the middle button. Once the buttons start to flash, then you have 30 seconds to vote. Councillors, the voting on the Labour amendment is as follows. 4, 8. Not voting, 3. No, 29. I therefore declare the amendment lost. The second vote is on ungrouped members' amendments. Would those in favour of these amendments press the I button, the top one? Those against, press no, the bottom one. And those wanting to abstain, press the middle button. Once the buttons start to flash, you have 30 seconds to vote. For the ungrouped amendment, the voting is as follows. 4, 2. Against, 35. And abstentions, 5. I therefore declare the amendment lost. We now move to the vote on the revenue budget, capital programme and council tax for 2025-26. The council has before it the recommendations set out in paragraph 2.2 and 2.3. Would those in favour press the I button, the top button? Those against, press no, the bottom button. And those wanting to abstain, press the middle button. And you now have 30 seconds to vote. The voting is as follows. For, 28. Against, 11. Abstentions, 3. I therefore declare that the Revenue Budget, Capital Programme and Council Tax for 2025-26 adopted. We now turn to the Housing Revenue Accounts Budget and Business Plan, which can be found on pages 285 to 335. I'll call upon Councillor McVeigh to move the report's adoption and Councillor Campbell to second. So, Councillor McVeigh.
Beg to move the report. I'd like to second, Mr. Mayor.
I will now call upon Councillor McVeigh to speak for up to 5 minutes. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to present the HRA budget to the Council, and a big thank you to all the officers. So the headline figure is that we have produced a balanced budget. I know we have to, but it really is no mean feat. We all know about councils all over the UK having to ask for extra financial help and having real trouble with their housing budgets. And we're also hearing the same from our registered housing providers. At the summit we hosted on Friday, they were saying this loud and clear. They were also saying that we welcome the new regulations. They are essential, but they come with costs, and we need to know where the government will help us on this. So a huge thank you to our housing management team. They have achieved this balanced budget by prudent planning and ensuring that our residents come first. And we have not cut back on repairs or maintenance. These are absolutely essential and they are non-negotiable, especially with our old homes. To balance this budget, we only have a certain number of levers. It's a ring-fenced account, so like other councils, we're raising rents by the government's rent standard. It's roughly a third of our residents pay the rent in full, and the remainder residents receive some level of benefit. And so for these residents, it's reassuring to know that benefits have also been increased. But that said, we know that there are some who financially struggle, and I would like to say to other members on the other side that we do know this, and we do care, and we do want to support them. And this is why we are continuing with our Tenancy Support Fund. And this supports those that most need it. And it's really targeted. Our officers work incredibly hard on this. And also, I'm sure you'll all be very pleased to hear that we have decided to step in and help our pensioners, our elderly council tenants, who were just above the pension credit, so really struggling. And they missed out on the winter fuel allowance that the new government cut so suddenly and so unfairly this autumn. So this council cares, and the support I know has been very welcome. So this budget also covers our 5-year capital plan. And this is our commitment. We are investing 400 million to upgrade our ageing council stock. And this is throughout the borough, despite what we are hearing across this chamber. It is absolutely throughout the borough, and it's now starting to bear fruit. Just this week I visited Pond House, and they've got new roofs and new double glazing, and I was heard that from the residents themselves that they absolutely love it. And this is all part of making our homes decent. And this is not just a nice phrase, it's a recognised standard that we must achieve for all our homes. And we have a clear plan to achieve 100% decency, and this is vitally important for us. So this budget also shows our commitment to the Lancaster West estate, with well over £100 million to improve the homes there. And this was a commitment we made jointly with government after the fire. And we're still looking to government to provide more of their share in the funding as promised. And we're working together with the Lancaster West residents and the Residents Association on this aspect. So finally, Mr. Mayor, and briefly, on to the 30-year business plan, which really has been a challenge. As you can imagine, none of us have a crystal ball, but we have a range of best and worst-case scenarios as laid out in the report. And as you'll see, there are some really tough decisions that we have to make. So, Mr. Mayor, to finish, I recommend this budget against a very difficult financial climate. It protects our capital programme, creating a clear plan to 100% decency. It maintains our tenancy support fund, helping residents who need us the most. And it continues with our New Homes programme, creating new social homes, the first in a generation for Kensington and Chelsea, committing to our fairer plan. So there are tough decisions ahead, but this council puts our residents first, and this housing revenue budget shows that. Thank you all.
The following members have indicated to me that they wish to speak. Councillor Simmons, Councillor North and Councillor Gardner. Are there any other members who wish to speak? Councillor Taylor-Smith and Councillor Jeddart. Very well, in which case I'll call upon Councillor Simmons to speak first. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've very much enjoyed the lead member's speech. Thank you for that. In the previous debate, the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee mentioned the recommendations of the Budget Scrutiny Working Group on the subject of transparency. So I'd just like to say I have read the HRA budget paper with very great interest, given the difficulties encountered with bringing this budget to scrutiny. The delays were attributed to the need to present it to the TCC first. However, under that agenda item at the TCC in January, no such budget was presented, contrary to what is implied at 13.11 on page 302. This was considered by the lead member to be acceptable, and indeed she stated that she herself had not yet seen the budget, despite it being scheduled for leadership approval in a matter of weeks. I hope to have a frank and honest conversation with the lead member to understand the obstacles preventing timely scrutiny of the HRA budget and to address these issues with transparency going forwards. The paper lays out very clearly the challenges facing the HRA. In the context of a self-financing model, the impacts of historic underinvestment, government rent controls, inflation and a whole slew of, albeit unnecessary and welcome, regulatory requirements are simply unsustainable without significant detriments to the tenants, if at all. There is a moral question here. Should residents, through their rents, have to bear the burden of any of these factors? I say not. It's time to return to the principle of social housing, which requires and deserves subsidy, and we owe it to our residents to do everything possible to ensure this happens. My committee has undertaken and is working on a representation to central government to this effect. I would hope and expect that the leadership of this council would do the same, and in the meantime look urgently at ad hoc sources of council or government subsidy from outside the HRA. It is a pity if such representations were not successfully made by this Conservative council under Conservative governments, but it's not too late to do the right thing now. As the Grenfell Council, I believe we have a duty nationally to take the lead in this. In the meantime, in the terms of developing options to close the budget gap in the 30-year business plan, including possibly less repairs, I welcome the Council's plan for consulting with residents on this, building on the feedback received at the Residents' Summit. I welcome too the forthcoming housing strategy and its forthcoming consultation, and I look forward to seeing this come to the HCSC in April. This represents an opportunity for the Council to work with residents in the context of its response to the Grenfell Inquiry report, and I'm hopeful that if done right and in good faith, it will deliver improvements for residents of all tenures. On the budget itself, I wish to make the following comments. Tenants not in receipt of universal credit or housing benefit, but on low or fixed incomes, receive no protection from the rent increases. These are the residents Councillor North would describe as just about managing. How are they supposed to absorb these increases? The Tenants Support Fund absolutely must take into account these, as well as the other vulnerabilities mentioned, and be directed accordingly, in keeping with the intention to target support towards the most vulnerable. Compensation for disruption where there are simultaneous multiple works, e.g. Lancaster West and Silchester Estate. These works follow a long legacy of neglect and disrepair, the threat of regeneration, and not to mention the impacts of the horrific disaster of Grenfell Tower, and it is right that compensation should be provided. However, this cannot be at the expense of other residents and therefore should not come from the HRA. The reasonableness of rent and service charges, in particular for residents of the Lancaster West estate. The Landlord and Tenants Act permits landlords to charge reasonable rents. We have heard from residents in this very chamber how the rents of Lancaster West estate compare with the rents at more luxurious buildings across the borough, which do not contain the site of a national disaster, and it has been wondered how this is reasonable. Similarly, the service charges and how these compare with blocks which have a concierge, a gym, a cinema. The question of reasonableness needs to be looked at. We note that rents for Lancaster West were frozen after the fire, that much of the rationale for this still persists. Therefore, it's unclear why that freeze is not still in place. On the subject of sound financial management and doing money well, I'd just like to mention on this item the £80 million black hole in the Lancaster West refurbishment, not to mention the £1.2 billion cost to the taxpayer of Grenfell, so just so the members on the other side can temper their comments on that point. So again, another alternative source of funding must be found for the rents for the Lancaster West. In closing, I note that there is very little room for manoeuvre in the HRA and that this is unlikely to change without either detriments to residents or external subsidy. Unless as a council we want the former, if we really do want to be the best council for residents, we must be demanding the latter and not stop until it is done. Thank you.
I now call upon Councillor North to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to highlight two important and positive areas from this budget. Support and capital investment, but I'd like to pay tribute to my colleague Councillor Simmons, who sits with us on the Scrutiny Committee, and this has been looked at quite a lot. I'd also like to say thank you to our wonderful councillor in North Kensington, Councillor Issy, because recently I visited, thank you, one of our wonderful libraries in North Kensington at surgery, and also we've been listening to residents in North Kensington who are quite pleased to find councillors knocking on their door, I might add, and they were quite pleased to give us their feedback on some of the quality things that are happening there, including the new housing that was approved last night in this chamber in Goulburn Ward, and the Barbary Road housing that the Scrutiny Committee paid visit to last year, which is coming on leaps and bounds. So I look forward to that new housing coming online soon. Now, each month I look forward very much to attend our Camden Ward Senior Citizens Lunch Club, and guests there are always very, very keen to tell us what matters to them. They asked me to remind all colleagues this evening that they are still concerned at the cost of living, their energy bills, their Thames water bills going up by a lot, and some of them are on pensions and fixed incomes, and all of them tell me how upset and shocked they are at this new government taking away their winter fuel allowances. I feel sad to see some of our other London councils that are planning to close their valued public services, including their libraries. Here in Kensington and Chelsea, not only will we maintain and enhance our public services, but we will continue to offer packages of support for those struggling or those that just need help. With offers of one-off £50 support payments and council tax reduction schemes for around 15,000 low-income households and a plan to extend free school meals outside of term time, and as for our ambitious £400 million programme to upgrade housing estates in the coming 3 years, at a recent Residents' Association in Camden Ward, I was very pleased to announce details of a consultation with residents to offer major improvements to their ageing building, to improve soundproofing, double glazing, and to ensure that their homes are better insulated and more energy efficient for the future. Another block is currently benefiting from a new security and CCTV upgrade, and this year they are having a new communal garden replanted. Their new garden club will include friends and neighbours for nearby flats that don't have their own gardens. So I very much welcome and support this budget that does include fair support for those who may need it, and the considerable investment that is being given for the longer term, which I believe shows our pledge to be that greener, fairer, safer, best council. Thank you.
I will now call upon Councillor Gardner to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to talk about the stresses and strains on the housing revenue account. Over the years, we've seen regulation increase, and rightly so. However, the cost of funding this works falls on the HRA, which is already struggling. The Social Housing Regulator, the Housing Ombudsman, and the Building Safety Regulator. They are all vital organisations in providing external scrutiny. But we do not see any funding from central government to help shoulder the financial burden of such ever-rising regulation and the regimes around them. It is vital that where central government either devolves roles back to local government or brings in new requirements, that it also funds such additional works. At the Residents' Summit in November last year, as set out in page 301 of the budget report, the feedback from residents was that spending on safety is non-negotiable and that other priorities ranged from cleaning, repairs and major works. I and some of my colleagues on the Housing and Communities Select Committee were invited to see the major works and repairs ongoing at Lancaster West just last week. It's welcome to see such works and to hear how the Council has improved over the course of the works in seeking to work alongside residents still living on the site. It's not perfect, and it's fair to say that officers are working on how to improve this, but the changes will be significant, including triple glazing, and as part of the Clean Air Kit, and I'm sorry I don't recall the specific technical phrase, there will be built-in air ducts which can detect damp and mould and alert the Council to the need for remedial work. A real welcome addition. There are significant challenges ahead to funding this and other works, with the HRA being ring-fenced, and we need to work with residents to help decide how and where to spend our funds in the future, and for the government to step up and pay their share too. Thank you.
I'll now call upon Councillor Taylor-Smith to speak. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll keep this really short. So really, first of all, just to thank the lead member for the amount of work and her team that have gone into this. I think just to pick up a couple of highlights. First of all, I find myself agreeing with Councillor Simmons with her statement that there's very little movement in this. And I will ignore, obviously, all the issues that you were then going to bring up that were going to put additional pressure on the HRA. I wanted to really talk about two things. First of all, the scale of the investment that we're doing here. It's recorded in here. There was a 70 million provision for works when we took over the TMO. That went up to 350 million the following year, and it's now a staggering 620 million. And I think people talk about decline and managed decline, and that's not the case as far as the council. It is a reflection on the fact we've got a lot of very old buildings. And I think I'm very encouraged to see that there is a plan to continue on the work of improving the homes, but also greening at the same time. But having said that, I think we have to acknowledge the impact that that has on the residents as well while that work is going on. And obviously one of the suggestions of compensation, which would be a real burden on the HRA to do it, I think we need to... The other thing also is just to see, encouraged by the continued reaffirmation of the New Homes programme that we're building at the moment and the importance of doing that within the borough. And it's something which we can be rightly proud of. And one particular aspect of this, which I think puts us fairly unique with any other local authority in London, is the fact that they're being done on a tenure-by basis. But I'm very happy to support the budget. Thank you.
I'll now call upon Councillor Jeddart to speak. Councillor.
Thank you. Once again, your budget has more holes in it than the Dutch cheese, but anyway, it is mantra of greener, fairer and safer. Just to show how this budget is not including people's voices, you have sold Canal Wade without public consultation. You never disclose that you have done it. You haven't done transparency. And Canal House, it's a different matter from a street which leads to Blue Boat House. You lease it out, Blue Boat House. You can easily use your budget to give it back to the council. No, you gave it back to the catalyst for profit, not for benefit of residents. Have they had any say on it? No. Your budget looks after your own and only your own. Holy development, you say about new homes programme, you have no provision for checking new housing stock. You have no provision for checking new housing stock. Hobby development for today on completion was in complete disrepair. I have families with small children, babies, and I brought to your attention many, many times, you are not offering 30% discount on the rent. You completely ignore any compensation coming forward. That's your hobby development new when you have sort of, all your propaganda in your channels. The issue is you have no provision for checking new housing stock on completion. Where it is repair. And you should have someone in the indoor team to do it. In regards to your budget for greening on council own estate, right, because it's a housing, so I believe you are referring to council stock. No provision for SATs. Once again, I have many wonderful council-run estates, St. Quintins, Balfour Valley and Traverton Ramis. They're on the SATs list. There's no provision for that. Equality is a human right. We have many people with asthma cases, even some of our councillors. Again, it does not reflect what is happening on the ground. Community asset. You have removed so many community assets from the residents' reach. I don't even want to mention once again Speed Theatre, which is leading now a business of hiring spaces for £150 a day with a small discount for the residents. That's a huge asset in Kensal House, historically built in 1937 for the residents' use, not for making money, and completely cutting residents from any use. If they want to use, they have to pay. Fairer, greener, safer. I think your budget, it's again for you, not for North Kensington, and a gap between North and South will never be resolved as long as people will vote for you, having no cautious for those mothers who are homeless, for those fathers who cannot meet their children in community spaces because you take them away for your speculation and money laundering, whatever you do. Thank you.
I'm now going to call upon Councillor McVeigh to sum up. You have 5 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I was just trying to get my head around some of those last comments. So maybe I'll have to take them up later with Councillor Jedit, because I don't think, to my knowledge, we've sold anything recently. But I will, of course, look into that. And I'd just like to thank Councillor Simmons for her role as Chair of Scrutiny. I do value all her comments, and I find the whole Scrutiny Committee very helpful. And as she rightly said, we have very few levers with what we can do with the HRA budget. And our tenancy fund does target people, so just to really remind that we really do look at that. And thank you, Councillor North, for reaching out to your elderly residents. I think that is always really appreciated, and hearing loud and clear that they really are missing the winter fuel payment. And we as a council are stepping in there to try to fill that gap where we can. Thank you, Councillor Gardiner. You say it very, very eloquently. Stresses and strains on the HRA budget with the regulations, which I said earlier, we really do welcome the regulations. We absolutely support them, but we would like some financial support as well for them, as with all other councils and providers. And always, thank you, Councillor Tim Taylor-Smith, my predecessor, who started the New Homes programme, first council homes in a generation, and we are now starting to bear fruit of that. And that actually is helping us reduce our waiting lists, because we're now starting to get people into social housing, key worker housing. So thank you for that. But you're right, the rest of our stock is very old. I mean, just this week I went to visit one which was built in 1902. And I was looking at the more modern block next to it, and actually that was 1948. So, but we have redone all those, that particular estate. So there is a lot to do, but I think this housing revenue budget, despite all these challenges, has produced a fair, balanced budget, and huge congratulations to the team for doing this. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your scrutiny on this.
Are the recommendations set out in paragraph 3.2 on page 24 of the agenda adopted? I declare the recommendations adopted. Councillors, we must complete all 3 budget items and the report on members' allowances this evening. I note we are coming close to 9:30 p.m. Would Councillor Addenbrooke move and Councillor Lari second the suspension of Standing Order 24.01 to allow the meeting to conclude after Agenda Item 10?
I wish to move.
Take that as agreed. In which case, we'll proceed to the Annual Treasury Management Strategy 2025-2026. I call upon Councillor Campbell to move the report's adoption, which is on pages 337 to 370, and then Councillor Thalasites to second.
I'd like to move, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to second.
In which case, I will now call upon Councillor Thalasites to speak for up to 5 minutes. Councillor.
No, I won't speak to the report. I'm content.
Are there any members who wish to speak to the report? Taking that as a no, I will call upon Councillor Thalasites, if he wishes to sum up.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I will respond to all of the interventions that have been made in this debate. But can I'll just thank the officers before I close. As we said earlier, Mike, Lisa, everybody else across the Finance and Resources Directorate have been fantastic.
Are the recommendations set out in paragraph 4.2 on page 25 of the main agenda pack adopted? I declare the recommendations adopted. Item number 10, reports from Council side committees. There is one item from Administration Committee to agree and adopt the Members' Allowances Scheme. Would Councillor Taylor-Smith propose the report's reception, which can be found on pages 371 to 411, and then Councillor Addenbrooke to second?
Pressing to vote. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm very happy to present the report. Thank you.
I wish to second.
Does any member wish to speak? I will take as a no, and I'll also just say to Councillor Taylor-Smith, if he does wish to speak to sum up, he is welcome to, but I'm going to take that as a no. Therefore, does the Council agree with the recommendations as set out on paragraph 4.1 on page 372? I'll now ask for all those in favour, please raise your hands. And now all of those against, please raise your hands. And then are there any abstentions? In which case, I declare the recommendations approved. Given the late hour, I'm going to direct that lead members provide written responses to any questions tabled to them. We will not have ward issues this evening, and all motions will be deferred. That then concludes the business of this evening's meeting of the Council. The next meeting of the Council is the full Council meeting scheduled to be held on the 30th of April 2025, starting at 6:30 p.m. Good evening.